on a disk, floating through space, with a tiny sun.
Hey, I'm FTFE, welcome back to the channel that does the stupidity what Professor Bell just did to the mind of God. That was something. Apologies for me getting a bit teary there. I often get that when talking about my little sister. So we have an interesting after show. Mind of God, if you're there, you can just come back in on the same link. We've got Derp Drop Drippy, I mean Hip Hop Hippie, with us. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
Hip Hop Hippie, a.k.a. Mad Mardigan, killing trolls. So trolls, go hide under your bridges and pull up them britches and stop being some bitches.
Cool
and grow
story,
up.
bro.
Let's go.
We also have with one of my quite large supporters, someone who's been helping me try and understand geodetic surveying. What do you want me to call you?
Just Tony is fine.
Tony, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Right. We've also got the Rumpus who should be joining quite soon. Let me just quickly email the Mind of God. Tell him to come back in on the same link. And then we'll get the after show started. Gleam doesn't want to come in because he got timed out apparently, and that's made him angry. Let me just tell Mind of God to come back in. Just come back on the same link. All right. Everyone's got links. We might get some more people in. We don't want too many because it can get a little bit rowdy. But Tony, let's start with you. What do you think about what just happened?
I think it was a triumph of cognitive dissonance, if I'm honest. He was presented with a lot of evidence, but he does what a lot of flat earthers do. Mind of God, I'm talking about. He doesn't take the time to actually formalize his claims. So his claims about orthogonality or independence, or what he wants to call it, he hasn't actually properly defined his vector space. He hasn't actually properly defined his inner product. So he doesn't. He just thinks that stuff is true without working through the formalism, and he does this a lot. He does this with the refraction, for instance. He doesn't present the mathematical formalism required to demonstrate the result that he's claiming. He just claims it, and he thinks he can prove it, but he hasn't sat down and done the numbers.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. I don't think Mind of God understands half the things that he's talking about. So.
It is rather interesting to hear somebody talking with some familiarity about vector spaces and Bessel functions and this sort of thing, without actually understanding the derivation of gravitational and magnetic potential fields. They have the same fundamental property, which means that they end up mathematically being identical. There's no way around it, and the claim that gravity and magnetic fields don't have the same properties is meaningless. I can't, and I have some evidence to present to him, but it's just not true. So,
well, Mind of God is back with us, so we can get to him in a second. First of all, I'd like to ask the other flat earther here his opinion of the debate that just happened. Hip Hop Hippie.
It was awesome. Mind of God showed him up. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to understand that the Earth is flat. Well, I'm actually a bumpy earther, but I roll with the flat earthers.
You're a flat earther. You don't need to distinguish yourself. Flat earthers.
Well,
flat earthers all know that there's hills and mountains, but you're still flat earthers.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure, like, you guys understand that, because sometimes I don't know if you guys do or not.
Yeah, no, we all understand that there's hills and mountains, and we understand what a flat earther believes.
This is actually symptomatic, if I might say. You think that very simple things that obviously must be logically true, we don't understand. And we do, we understand them extremely well, and we're moving actually in a much higher, we're moving sort of so far beyond that while you're still grasping with the idea of topography being an exception to sort of the shape of the Earth. Yes, that's a third order effect, if anything.
Absolutely.
Well, the Earth is, bumpy. It has mountains. It has canyons. It has crevices.
Yep, it does.
Right, let me just introduce the rest of the people that are here
Wait,
before we get into
the
it.
reason why we call it flat. The reason why we call it flat is because there is no curvature. What's the opposite of curvature?
Okay,
Flat.
We'll get to that, but we also have on the show the resident expert in refraction, the Rumpus. How you doing? Rumpus, you there? Have I got you muted? Is it my fault? No, he should be there. He's probably just away from the mic right now. Anyway, I think we've also got the Mind of God who's come back. How you feeling after that beating you just took?
Gentlemen, I just had a little glass of water. I'm feeling hydrated. Everything's good.
Awesome.
Who else is on the panel?
Well, we have Hip Hop Hippie, we've got the Rumpus, we have one of my subscribers, Tony, who is the guy that talked about, he's got the PhD in, I can't remember exactly what it was, we'll let him respond to that.
Geophysics.
Geophysics, yeah.
Okay.
Which is, I think, pretty good for the conversation that we're in. Team Skeptic will probably be joining us in a bit as well, but why don't we just get into it? Hip Hop Hippie and Mind of God. You got any evidence that the Earth's flat?
Can you hear me?
Oh, wait, yes, Rumpus. Hello, Rumpus, how you doing?
Hello, Craig. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, except for the bite marks that are now covering my monitor and desk I've got here. Jesus Christ.
You've no idea how many times I wanted to butt in there.
I can imagine. Oh, dear.
Thank you for joining.
Is this the same Rumpus from the other? Okay, good.
Yes,
Welcome.
this is the Rumpus. And Team Skeptic will probably join us in a bit. I know he's got some errands and stuff to run. But let's just get into it.
The more important question is, why do you guys believe we live on a flying, spinning, hurtling ball?
Well, we've got evidence for it.
May I answer that question?
Yes, Tony, go ahead.
Okay, so there are tens of thousands of seismic events that have been recorded at seismic stations all across the Earth. And if you just take the arrival times of the seismic energy from each of those events, and you try to solve for the configuration that permits those arrival times, you end up with a sphere. Similarly, if you...
That's a story. That's a story. Thank you.
No, that isn't a story, and I'll thank you not to suggest that the people I work with have been fictionalizing. You haven't read the literature. You don't understand the physics. You're a mathematician who has done some work on data processing. You are not a seismic engineer.
Where did you get your PhD?
I got my
Nice cartoon.
My PhD is from the Australian National University, where I worked for BP Petroleum on the Sniper project.
Okay.
Where we had to analyze seismic signals from a field in Algeria to see if we could identify oil deposits at depth, and we used a very sophisticated flat Earth model developed by Brian Kennett, one of the premier seismologists in the world, who works at ANU. He's now an emeritus professor there. So I will thank you not to characterize the work of my colleagues as fiction.
You just said flat Earth model. Did you mean ball Earth model?
No, I meant flat Earth model, because over short distances, a flat Earth model is sufficiently accurate. But if you're trying to solve for seismic travel times on planetary scales over more than a few hundred kilometers, you have to include the effects of sphericity. And if you don't include the effects of sphericity, it doesn't work. Now, you discarded my question about... No, I'm still talking.
Yeah, let him finish his point.
You discarded my question about travel times from one side of Antarctica to the other as meaningless, which, for starters, is just frankly insulting. But all you need to do is look at the arrival times of the seismic energy at the seismic stations around the edge of Antarctica, and you can see that the energy gets from one side of Antarctica to the other side of Antarctica in a matter of minutes. Under the flat Earth formulation, they are on opposite sides of the world, and they should be the last places to receive the seismic energy, not amongst the first.
All right, Mind of God, do you want to respond to that?
That's just a story. That does nothing. That's just like literally, I mean, you could just be reading out of like a fairy tale.
Did you not listen to anything that he said?
Well, I'm going to ask him specific questions about his assumption of flatness locally after he's done telling stories.
Okay.
Okay. So are you familiar with a map migration? Do you know what that
no.
is? Okay.
No.
So a map
I
migration...
just said no.
Yeah, I'm gonna explain. So the algorithm that I was working on, I work for Western GECO, which is owned by Schlumberger. So a map migration basically takes an existing seismic image and samples it, in 3D cubes, and then we ray trace back to the surface through an old velocity model.
So this is a form of tomographic inversion.
This is a model update. When you have a new velocity model, we are now updating.
So this is a tomographic inversion. Do you understand what the term tomographic inversion refers to?
I'm going to guess no.
Is that the undoing of the old velocity model? Then yes, it is. Then
a tomographic inversion. Tomography is a general mathematical field that refers to using travel times to infer the velocities of the component elements.
That's not what we're doing.
Okay, so what are you doing?
That's not what this is. This is a demigration.
Just before we carry on, guys, just want to introduce Team Skeptic, who's just joined. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, what up?
I don't appreciate him interrupting my story just so he can insert two words that have nothing to do with what I'm about to say.
Well, we'll get to that because it absolutely does have what to do.
No, it doesn't. We're not calculating velocities. We have existing velocity models in what I'm talking about. So don't interrupt me then. You didn't like when I interrupted you.
Okay, finish what you're saying.
Okay, so this map migration, this demigration step that's occurring is we are demigrating two rays through an old model that we believe is updated with new information. For example, when people drill, they're getting new information. They're getting new information of the subsurface. And so we're using that information. People are making new velocity models to honor that information as they're drilling. So we now have a new model that we have more confidence in. We have an old one that we have less confidence in. So we demigrate through the old model. We shoot two rays for each of these 3D cubes up back towards the surface. We try and reconstruct the experiment that created that blip, in time in the subsurface. And so once we feel like we've recovered those 2 points at the surface that created that event down below, then now we have its position at the surface, and then we remigrate those two rays back down to the surface. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is that those total distances that those are traveling are appreciable. It may not be in a very, very small survey, but we're talking about very, very large surveys where if the Earth was curved, then it would alter the layers below where it would change the physics. And so we did not account
That's an assertion with no validation.
No, that is me writing the code for this program.
Yes, I wrote the code to study in Algeria. So you don't get to claim that you have superior technical expertise to me or superior experience in this field.
I never said superior.
Further,
I just said this is what I have done for a company. So you tell me what you've done for the company.
Yes. So what? You need to demonstrate from there what I've done in history.
No, I'm saying why in this ray tracing will we not need to account for the fact that the Earth would be curved?
Because the distances aren't large enough.
No, I'm telling you they are large.
You say appreciable.
We're talking
U.S. thousands of kilometers.
Yeah. It's depth, sir. It's deep. The rays are down in the surface, not just lateral,
You're suggesting that you're using a flat Earth model to trace rays thousands of kilometers into Earth's interior? Is that what
So
you're claiming?
we're talking about the experiment lateral being appreciable distance, and then the ray has to travel down towards wherever this point is in depth,
Yes,
and
and
then back up to the surface.
I asked for the. Can you quantify the distance scale laterally?
I want to hear some quantification.
I would have to look at some of the surveys that we worked on. I could get
Okay,
that
so you
information.
don't know what you're actually talking about, do you?
Well, I mean, we're not talking about 3 meters, so we're not talking about 3 meters.
No,
here,
but I
where-
said that anything
one
less
second,
than.
Rumpus, let me finish talking to this moron. So we're not talking about small distances where just 1 degree is not a big deal. You know, all those stupid responses you guys say. Oh, it's 5 miles. That angle wouldn't really make a big difference if the Earth was curved or not.
So
That's absurd.
listen up. Okay. I said in my statement that on scales less than several hundred kilometers, you can get away with using a flat Earth approximation. But on
No,
scales,
it's not an
but on
approximation.
planetary,
Mind of God, let him respond.
Okay.
as was explained to you in your debate, any mathematical model at all is a form of approximation.
What are you talking about?
So
I'm not going to agree to that.
when
He's talking about a principle.
Okay, so you are claiming that mathematical models define reality, that reality agrees completely with
Some
a
of them
given
can,
mathematical
yeah.
model.
Some, yeah. I mean, yeah, some.
Then you
I
don't know
wanna
what you're
say every
talking
single
about.
one. Sure.
You
okay,
don't know what you're
if
talking
your
about.
models, Yeah, if all your models are approximation and garbage, then you should be a ball earther. So you're in the right group.
Approximations are garbage.
So
Yeah, like, yeah, you're saying that there's approximations and stuff, therefore it's garbage. But when you have a mathematical model, you can use that to make approximations, and then compare it to references and stuff.
I don't know why he's making such a strong statement that all mathematical models are approximations. Why make that statement? Unless we go and search through all the mathematical models that have been constructed.
I mean, do you know what
What's
a mathematical
the point
model?
of that statement?
It's literally what a mathematical model is. Like, I don't understand the objection here.
Well, I don't want to limit the possibility that it's directly reflective of real life.
I think the Rumpus had something to add to this. Rumpus?
All right.
Yeah, I'd like to know what. I mean, I didn't understand what Mind of God actually claimed he did. Perhaps, the geologist does know, but I didn't understand it. He was just talking about a velocity model. So, what exactly data are you getting in, and what are you deriving from that?
So the input to this migration that, like I said, is
What
called
does
a
that
map
mean?
migration.
Sorry, what does migration mean? Tell me what that means. I didn't understand
Oh,
that
okay,
word.
sorry. Sorry. I'll go through the quick steps of seismic that I've done, at Western GECO. So we get raw data from the field in the time domain. So for people who are not familiar with this type of experiment,
Raw data of what?
And what's that?
You said raw data. What data in the time domain? But
Yeah, I'll explain.
Data?
Sorry, I'm going to walk through it. This is what it is. So we put some kind of explosive or dynamite into the earth. That is the thing that creates the seismic event.
when you say we, he means an actual field technician does this?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Someone
He's
in the
just
field.
looking at the data. I think we'll accept that. He's just looking at the results.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So then there's speakers. There's things that can receive sound on the ground in a grid. In a pattern in the area that we're interested in.
They're called seismometers.
Yeah. So that data then is in the time domain, and we get that. We get that data.
So there are lots of seismometers. Are there lots of seismometers? You have a
right.
grid of
So it's just over.
Seismometers,
Yeah, it's a survey that we actually put the sampling, the amount.
Right, and how big is this grid? Give us an idea.
I know that's the. I mean, I have to look at the ones that I've actually done.
Is it 1 mile? Is it 10 miles? Is it 100 miles?
No,
you must have some idea.
No, it's 10.
Of whether on that scale.
It's 10 by 10.
10 by 10 miles.
10 by 10 miles.
Yeah. It would be on that order that we've done processing on that.
Oh,
so Rumpus, there are terms there's wide azimuth, narrow azimuth. There's different levels.
Surely, my God, you've
surveys.
realised that over 10 miles you can use a flat Earth model.
No, not when we're talking about that. That's the point I was trying to make with him. That extent of the survey is one possible reason to maybe not have to take into Earth curve. But the rays are going.
Again, mind of God.
Going down.
What is the amount of curvature in 10 miles?
There is no curvature.
It's your model, dude. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, According
There's
to
none.
the ball Earth, 69 miles to 1 degree. So what degree of curvature are we talking about for 10 miles?
There is no curvature.
The ma-
Stop saying curvature.
There is
But the
curvature.
main
Shut the
issue-
fuck up, you retard.
But Craig, at the surface, that's one issue. But we're talking about all the layers beneath would have to follow that same curve, right?
Yes. Have
so
you?
all the- and
so
so all-
how long? How
What
long
curve? There
was
is no
the-
curve.
I mean, hip hop hippie, you can keep saying that, but you just sound like a retard.
No, there is no curve.
So-
You guys keep bringing up
What
curve.
is
There
the?
is no
What
curve.
is the?
Hip hop. We're
What
trying to
is
consider
the
if there isn't
time-
Hold on. Could I just say, with hip hop, we're just trying to consider if the Earth is a sphere, what radius of what curvature would be Mind of God having to deal with? And of course, it's 1/6 of a degree.
Well, you say if.
Sorry, one
You're
second.
just assuming. Like,
Yeah,
why
that's not-
is
We
it
have
not
to
No,
for the
when-
conversation, you
There is no curvature.
fucking idiot.
There is-
You consider
There-
a model.
Okay,
there shouldn't
can
be a
I-
conversation. There,
Disprove it.
there is no
at
curvature.
At the risk of, I'd like to actually sort of formally move to a different topic, if that's okay.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely. I think a good topic is probably the black swan, because honestly, I can't believe that people are still talking about the black swan when it's been so thoroughly demolished. Like, how can anyone still think that the black swan is evidence exclusively supporting the globe? Because it's not, in the slightest.
Is there a way of showing my screen?
No, if you could send me an email, I'll put up what you're trying to show.
Oh God.
Wait,
That's
why are
a
we
lot
getting
of
off
pain.
this topic when we have a geophysics guy? That doesn't make sense. Let's
okay,
talk about the
because
surveys.
you're not listening to me. There's no point
Go.
discussing this if you're not going to listen to what I have to say. And every time I try and introduce technical expertise into this conversation, you say that's just a story, it isn't real. Which means that me and my colleagues have published papers and produced results that are, according to you, completely fraudulent. So I am fraudulently accepting my paycheck according to you.
And these are peer reviewed.
That's
So-
I'm
that's
sorry,
a
what's-
straw man.
So,
Sorry,
so
geophysics guy?
your statement is that I am a liar and a fraud. So if you are wondering why this conversation has suddenly become considerably less civil than it was with Philip Bell, that will be the reason.
Well,
No,
why-
he's just saying you're brainwashed, man.
No, he's peer reviewed. People
No,
check
I'm
this
not.
stuff.
There's observational evidence, and you guys are just ignorant of it, and you refuse to consider it. I can show,
What's-
you know,
What's the observation?
I can show the seismic,
Can I interrupt
the
for 1
time
second?
taken for a seismic wave to travel from one side of Antarctica to another.
Yeah, what are you trying to say, team?
Detected.
Okay.
Well, so you're,
One sec, hip hop.
sorry.
Okay, let
what's the
team
name?
just.
What's the name of the Yeah, what's the name of the PhD guy? I'm sorry, I came
It's
in late. I didn't catch
sorry.
the name. What was your
This
name,
is
sir?
Tony.
Just Tony.
Tony.
And Tony, they're called
Tony,
geophones.
real
They're
quick
called
question.
geophones, by the way. They're called
Is,
geophones that record
is your-
Yep.
seismic events.
Is your PhD thesis falsifiable?
My PhD thesis is falsifiable. Yeah. It's
Okay,
It's,
there you go.
it-
Mind of God, hip hop hippie. All you got to do is go falsify his doctorate thesis or his thesis. I'm sorry, and then once you falsify that, then you can prove that he's nothing more than a hack. Until then,
No, we were talking
because
no, that's a setup. That's not what we're talking about. We were talking about a 10 like just for an example, 10 mile by 10 mile, let's say 3,000 foot.
Yeah, which is nothing.
survey.
Seriously, 10
Yeah, but-
miles.
but
That's
Craig,
3,000 feet. 3,000
Let's
feet
just use
is
that.
negligible. It is so shallow. Like, you know,
Right,
you
so
guys.
that's the part. That's the part where you would have to then make a statement mathematically as to why that is. That all those, whatever this acoustic ray tracer that we're using would not care about a certain amount of curvature. That's your position, right?
Yes.
Right.
And it's
so
demonstrable.
that's-
You can do that. You can do intercomparisons, and they do intercomparisons
I'd
of
like to see
flat Earth model. Well, look at the literature; it's out there. You claim to be a scholar. How much Earth science literature have you read? I heard you
Earth
prattling on
science
about
literature.
climate science being proof of a contained. Have you read a climate science textbook?
I'm not a climate change
They're out
denier,
there. They're
dude.
publicly available.
I'm
Pardon?
not a climate change denier.
I don't care
deny
if you
that
are or not. You were prattling about climate science without any technical understanding of what it is.
That's what flat earthers
doesn't
do.
matter about
They
physics.
talk about stuff that they don't understand.
You're pushing something's negligible without telling us why it's negligible. You're just saying it's negligible, like
Well, no, we are
Because
telling you
the
exactly why it's
studies-
negligible. Because the
It
size
wasn't
that you were
even. It wasn't
talking
even
about.
Mind of God
no,
claim
you'd have
though.
to know.
It was-
You'd have to know
No,
how
no,
that
no.
acoustic propagator. You'd have to know how that ray tracer works. Does it care about a
Yes.
certain amount of degrees when it's calculating at different?
No, it
when
doesn't.
it's hitting a different density.
Of course it
Well,
fucking
how do
doesn't.
you know that? You
No.
didn't design these things.
Because
Yes,
he's got a
You're not
PhD
smart
in
enough
it,
to
you
do that.
fucking moron.
No, dude, the people.
Are you
So
no
the-
no? What, mind of God,
so
hold
the-
on. Mind of God, hold on. Are you saying that the guy sitting here that literally has a PhD in the shit we're talking about isn't
Yeah.
smart enough?
Not for this stuff because this is a math thing. This is actual like.
And you
real,
don't think
like,
that in
Yes,
his
I-
PhD he had to do any maths?
not this kind of stuff.
Actually,
What the fuck are you
He's already
talking about?
assumed the sphere.
No, it's
He's
not.
already
It's
assumed
not
the
an
sphere.
insult.
may
It's not an
I
insult.
speak?
Yeah,
This
go
is
ahead,
not-
Tony.
May I speak? My thesis was primarily dedicated to the adaptation of propagator matrix techniques from seismology to analysis of viscoelastic deformation under changes in surface load. So actually, it involved detailed assessment of mathematical modeling of seismic wave propagation. Do you
Good, so
understand
then
what
you
a
would know.
propagator matrix technique is?
Well, good. So then you would know then when does that assumption for curvature, when is it necessary at what seismic survey size then? There you go. Answer the question then. We'll leave it at that. I can't argue unless I look into it.
At about 220 kilometers, beyond 220 kilometer distances, your flat Earth models are going to be completely useless.
How deep then can you survey?
The depth doesn't come into this. Why do you keep
Yeah,
bringing
it does.
up
The whole
depth?
ray is traveling. The ray would be traveling.
But yeah, but you're only
to
going
image
down,
the
10 miles? Well, how
that's what
deep
I'm
are you
asking
going
him.
with your stuff?
Not 10 miles, dude.
Well, there you go then.
So-
So it doesn't matter
I'm
on your
asking
model
him
whether
though.
it's flat or
He's
not.
the expert, not you. Let me ask him.
Yeah, but my God, can you not understand that if you're just going down a few miles, the fact that the surface is curved by a quarter of a degree makes no difference to what you're doing?
No, but Rumpus, all these layers, right? They're curving, and so all the math would get
But by only a
altered.
quarter of a
if all.
degree.
But that's what I'm asking
Only
him.
by a
What
quarter
depth
of a
then?
degree in the section you're playing with of 10 miles.
Yeah, but Rumpus, if you understand errors, right? If you have a quarter of a degree off at the first layer, that's
Yeah,
going to
but I thought you
down,
said that
right?
mathematical models don't have errors.
Yeah, he's saying
No,
our
I
model
said.
is
I
he's
said
saying
some.
that the
I said
approximation
some may
ignoring
not.
it would be too much
Alright, if you guys can hear me, set that back up. Fucking power cut. Yeah, I need a fucking generator, guys. I'm sorry.
I hear an echo.
Oh, that's fucking my thing. Hold on.
So who all's back right now?
I am back. I am Tony.
Tony,
MoG's here.
good to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you, team. Been admiring your work and Flutter and Craig's for a while.
Thank you.
It's a
Thank you. I
pleasure to
appreciate
actually talk to you.
Yep, I like having fun and shit talking, and of course you probably know that by now. So I'm gonna get on here and have some fun with you
I
guys.
picked that up. So yeah, okay. Well, that's good. I'm sorry. I seem to be getting. I just objected to the hand wave dismissal of my work and the arguments. So it seems like if that's the way it's going to be, then a lot of this is going to be pointless.
Yeah.
There's nothing to dismiss. There was no claim made of any technical nature. So.
Yes, there was. The claim was that we can. The claim was that we can observe seismic travel times, and we can observe the travel times take. We can observe the time it takes for a seismic wave to travel from one side of Antarctica to the other.
Okay, can you hear me now?
And you'll.
Yep.
And is
Yes.
the echo?
Yep.
Has the echo gone?
Yep.
Right,
Yes, the
excellent.
echo has gone.
What up, Rumpus? What up, Rumpus?
Oh.
Haven't talked to you in a minute, man. How you been?
Yeah. How team? Yeah, I just want to congratulate Tony. I thought you had good when you were last here on with Fight the Flat Earth. I thought that was a very interesting stuff you had to say, particularly about this travel time. I think to the.
Right.
I mean, the point is that what you're talking about is, and what MoG, Mind of God, is talking about is completely different things. You're talking about
Yep.
waves traversing the entire length of the Earth, and he's talking about a little survey near the surface of the Earth over
Yep.
10 miles. There's absolutely nothing
That's
to
right.
do with one another.
No, and you're also talking about tens of thousands of different seismic events with largely global coverage, as opposed to a particular region, and you've got to come up with a geometry that reconciles all of this, and you can actually do it from a different. You can take tsunami travel times. The time it takes a tsunami to travel from its point of origin to different points around the globe, you can reconcile the tsunami travel times with spherical distances, and they match up. So every time we've got an independent a wave traveling from one point on Earth to another at a velocity that we can well estimate, the time it takes to get from that one point to the other well agrees with the spherical distance. And it confounds me that this simple reality is just being waved away as nothing is being claimed. It's a story.
It is a story.
Well, okay.
But it's really not a story.
Okay.
It's a peer-reviewed science. That's the fucking opposite of a story. My God, honestly, you just saying it's a story is so disrespectful to literally every single person in the field of geophysics. It's
Well, no, I'm trying to get him to.
Hey,
trying to get him to use language of stuff I'm familiar with, like that I've.
well,
actually
okay.
done.
1
But
plus
mind
1
of
is
God.
2.
No, actually, may I address that? May I address that?
Yeah.
It is not
Yes,
my
you can.
responsibility. It is not my responsibility to present physical evidence in terms that you are comfortable with. Physical reality, science is about assessing the evidence we have, not the evidence we wish we had. So people want to say, I want to see the curve. Well, there are only a limited number of ways of seeing the curve, and you guys don't accept any of them. So
Well,
that's a
apparently
bust.
you can see the curve across Lake Pontchartrain.
You can see, no,
So it's not that
wait,
hard.
Let me clarify. You can see the effects of curvature over Lake Pontchartrain.
No, that's semantics nonsense.
So you keep on asking for, I want to see this, I want this to happen, I want this explained to me in certain terms. That's not science's job. We have the evidence we have, and we're trying to work out what we can do, what we can work out about reality from that evidence. It's not our job to then transfer that and transform that evidence into something that you find persuasive. If you don't find it persuasive, then you're disabled. And that's sad. Yeah. I feel sorry for you. But it's not my job.
I feel sad that you guys
My
don't
God.
think that you guys don't think that 10 mile by 10 mile survey imaging some thousands of feet in the ground would matter whether the Earth is curved, like the ray tracer would not care about that.
Well,
That's
I
sad.
can
That's
prove that
absurd.
it doesn't. So I can prove mathematically that it doesn't. So
Which is, we agreed that maths is the only place that proof exists, right?
So what you're dealing with here is the comparative performance of two mathematical models. One in which you're doing the ray tracing assuming a flat Earth geometry, and the other one in which you're doing the ray tracing assuming a spherical geometry. And so you can look at the difference in performance between the two mathematical models, and the difference is tiny, less than the observational error of your geophones and geophones and clocks. You can use a flat Earth model on that sort of scale. It doesn't matter. That's why flat Earth models are used. And let's turn it around. Okay, let's turn this around. You claim that sphericity should matter on these small timescales. How about if the Earth is flat, why don't you solve for earthquake locations using flat Earth seismic models? You seem to have the technical skills that will permit you to do this.
What are you talking about? Are you drunk? Are you
No,
stupid?
I'm not drunk.
You're a moron, dude. Don't say stupid stuff like that.
Right, mind of God, if you can address his points rather than just being a dick, that would be fantastic.
He wants me to go and start doing random seismology experiments as if I have access to this kind of thing, like this idiot.
Well, if I thought
he's asking you to mathematically model it.
Actually,
Okay.
there are the seismic arrival times for different events are publicly available in the IRIS catalogue. I suggest you the International Research Institutes of Seismology.
Anything you recommend is absolute nonsense from this point forward. So I can't listen to somebody this stupid.
So just because you don't understand, because you're too thick to understand, it means it's nonsense.
Because he's making absurd, like, just go look at this book, whatever, go look, yeah. We're talking about specific things that
Mind of God, listen, hold on. I want to step in and speak for 1 second. When I asked him whether his thesis was fucking falsifiable or not, it was because you keep saying it's a story. Well, if it's just a story, let's talk about something that's not falsifiable, like the claim that God exists, right? That's not falsifiable. That is a story. What he's telling you is falsifiable, meaning you could go out there yourself. It doesn't mean that you have the equipment, but someone who has the equipment has done this before to verify what he said. If what he said was false, they would come back and go, no, you're wrong, and he would have been awarded his PhD.
The whole point is that what I've gone through is essentially that, but just the narrow version that I was
you
looking
haven't.
At. So,
yes, you've done a tiny portion of the Earth. You cannot claim that in any meaningful sense that you can extrapolate from that to the global scale Earth. And whenever I say, look, there are global scale databases around, you just hand wave it away as a story, which is actually why I would like to go to my my other speciality, which is actually gravity fields.
Okay, just before we get there, I just want to check that we've got everyone back in the call. Hip Hop Hippie, you there? No, he still can't figure out how to use tech. Bob the Science Guy, I saw you joined.
Yep, produce. I'm here.
Welcome, Bob. Thank you for joining. So we actually have experts in the field here.
Bob,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, experts in what, dude?
Like everything.
Really?
I mean,
right. Sure.
I'd like to talk about the concept that mass does not attract mass. As a geophysicist, and you may you may want to Google this. There is a thing called gravimetric mineral exploration, where people take gravimeters and they look at variations in Earth's gravity field at a particular altitude above the surface, and they use that information to infer the existence of density anomalies near Earth's surface. And mineral companies spend significant amounts of money using this as an exploration technique to locate subsurface ore bodies. Now, if your claim that mass does not attract mass is correct, why do people pay for training in this field? Obviously, they're completely unemployable. This skill is not useful in any practical sense. Not only do people train them, but companies actually build gravimeters and other people buy them. Why does that happen if the gravimeters are useless? Why do mineral companies waste their money on gravimetric mineral exploration, and why do other companies exist that offer these services? Money talks, bullshit walks is a phrase that my brother likes to use a lot.
I'll agree with that.
There's a lot of money that goes into gravimetric mineral exploration, and I'd like you to explain why that is.
What's it measuring?
It's measuring changes in gravitational acceleration. It's doing that using gravimeters. The gravimeters operate on a bunch of different principles. Most commonly, they have a non-conductive mass that is suspended between two springs, and it detects changes in the tension state of the spring.
It measures the tensions.
Yeah. So if there's a gravitational acceleration that is going to be slightly different due to different mineral deposits, the tension in that string, in the spring, will be able to tell you what force is being exerted due to the gravitational acceleration underneath it.
So it's
from the changes.
So it's understanding mass, different types of, like, that's the part I'm confused. You're talking about different electrical properties or different mass.
All it's doing is measuring the difference in the weight that something is at different places on the planet.
Yeah,
local
that's right.
Value of little g. That's all it's effectively doing. It's all you need to think about, because the value of g isn't quite the same all over the surface of the Earth.
Which
Hip Hop Hippie, you there?
Which is affected by the density underneath the density of the ground directly
and also
underneath
your latitude,
it. And that's what he's saying is they can.
Yes, also your latitude.
So that's what he's saying.
There are other effects that need to be taken into account. You're quite right, Rumpus. Thank you.
Which mind of God, you would have to explain why we would need to also take into account our latitude, which is it's directly related to the spin of the Earth.
Are you talking in terms of this gravitometer or whatever, or just what are you talking
Yes,
about?
the gravimetric readings.
Because this thing is so sensitive that it can actually the spin of the Earth, the centrifugal force of the spin of the Earth, actually makes a difference on these machines. They're that sensitive.
Yeah, it's worth.
We still haven't gotten a clear understanding what it's measuring.
I just
it's
told
measuring.
You.
Let him answer.
Can I repeat? Right. No. My God, it's very simple. There's effectively a little weight in these things. And the weight, that is the force of gravity, because weight is defined as the force of gravity acting on a mass. So you've got the same mass, you take it around the world, and in different places, the weight of that mass is different. One, because of the density of the local area around the Earth. So if you're very near a very dense... So if you were over a lump of lead, it would show a greater weight. Similarly, it's dependent on the latitude, because the centrifugal force will cause it to weigh less. So you've got
But wait,
two
so
factors
Rumpus,
there.
in that formula, is the M1 is fixed? You're saying it's looking for the other M2 kind of thing? Like the first M is known and it's sampling for the other M? Okay.
Well,
but isn't the
it's
Earth
more complicated.
M overwhelming
It's
that?
more... No. That's not what's happening.
Okay.
So you've gotten it wrong. And I can see where you're going with this. You're trying to say that the M2 is just the mass of the Earth. No. M2 is the integrated contribution of all of the mass located inside of the Earth, the effect of that on the mass inside the gravimeter. Now, point source approximations for gravity only work in very special cases. close to a body that has a non-uniform density distribution, you need to actually calculate the gravity contribution from the entire density distribution. You don't get to treat the Earth as a point source in this particular case. You have to integrate the density of the entire system.
But Tony,
If I
this
may
is a
ask a
Of course you
this is a
couldn't treat
measuring
this.
device.
Right,
This is a
one
measuring
sec, one
device. So
question.
you don't need. This is a measuring
Yep.
device. You don't need to do any maths.
Yeah,
It
that's
actually
right.
just gives you a value.
But the reason, yep, that's right. But in order to calculate, I'm talking about going from the observation of gravitational perturbations to the inference
to get
of
the
density.
variation. Right. Yeah.
Yep,
Right.
to get the density variation. So
And
that
you
step
presumably to do that,
relies
you have-
on.
Yeah.
And
May
you
I
presumably
ask
have to
a
have
quick
lots
question?
of measurements to do that because just one measurement you wouldn't know where the density or the.
Yep,
presumably you get
that's-
a 3D model result of that.
Yep, that's right. So so there's a non-unique solution. In
sorry.
fact,
Tony, sorry, quick question. If you were underneath a big lump of lead, for instance, presumably the angle also of the gravitational vector would be changed very slightly, which would indicate
yep,
what's going
that's
on.
right. Yep, that's
Brilliant.
right. And indeed, actually, the American military developed instrumentation for submarines that detects the gravity gradient, and the American military used these instruments so that their submarines can passively detect the presence of nearby mountains, underwater mountains, rather than
Right.
using sonar, which would betray the submarine's position. They
indeed,
they track the gravity gradient.
Well, this is very similar, of
So-
course, to the alternative to the Cavendish experiment, where they had the Schleilion mountain, where they were trying to measure
Schleilion, yeah.
the value of. See, I can never pronounce the double.
But wait, Rumpus, this is even better. If it's
Okay, just finish,
able to
Billy.
dynamically
One sec,
measure-
mind the God, one sec.
Okay,
5 more
go
seconds.
for it.
In
Yeah.
that, they basically were using the fact that you have uneven gravitational attraction due to the fact you're next to a great big mountain as a means to actually measure the value of G. And similarly, what Tony's describing here is you do that underwater, and presumably if you have a gravitational map inside the submarine's computer, you can say from the gravitational values, presumably where it's going, the vector, say, oh, I must be near this mountain. or
Well,
something.
you just observed the gravity. Actually, the underwater maps that you see are actually defined by they're defined by gravity.
Right.
So what you do is you sail a ship or you fly a plane over the surface of the ocean, and you detect and you measure gravity as you're going, and the variations allow you to determine where there are subsurface mountains. In effect, more technically, actually, the way this is done nowadays, you actually use sea surface altimetry. So the satellites orbiting Earth, they measure sea surface elevation, and actually the water bunches up around the mountains
Awesome.
because of their effect on the equipotential surface. So
No, I think,
that's how
that's
a lot of
amazing.
these.
I think Team Skeptic had a question for you, Tony.
The what now?
Didn't you have a question?
I wouldn't.
I thought I heard you say something.
That
no,
was me.
It was me. I was the one who was asking a question. It was me.
All right, okay.
Okay, so we have
No,
this
that was
measuring
me
device,
that asked
right?
a question.
So
Oh, right, no, Bob wanted to ask a question. Bob, please go ahead.
Yeah, Tony, I was just kind of curious, just for my own education on this. Is this gravitometer, I guess you call it? Is that basically like a hypersensitive?
There is no gravity. Why are
finish
you
your
guys
question.
talking about gravity? Dude? I don't get it.
All right, hip hop
Adults
hippie.
are talking.
If
Adults
there's-
are talking hip hop.
Yeah, hip hop
Now,
hippie. If there's no gravity, what the fuck are we measuring?
I
That's
don't
what
know
we're
what the
trying to
fuck
figure
you
out.
guys are measuring,
What
but
do you think your
it's not
scales in
gravity.
your bathroom are measuring? What do you think the scales in your
Yeah.
bathroom are
What is
measuring?
my
gravity?
audio
What is
gone or
gravity?
something?
Define gravity.
but wait, no,
Is my
let's
audio
I
gone
want
or
to talk.
something?
Let's
Wait,
stick to this.
Bob,
Let's
carry
stick
on.
to this device. Let's stick to this device because
All
you
right.
brought it up, and I think it's a good one.
So is this?
It's a man-made device. It doesn't
Right, hip
prove
hop
anything.
hippie. The adults are talking. Hold on. Sorry, Bob. When you
Now,
go.
is this device very similar to the accelerometer in our phones, but just a
Yep.
very much more
Yes.
sensitive version of it, and it
Yep.
gives us a vector
Yes.
of gravity, and the change in the vector of gravity kind of tells us that there's a mass to our left or right?
Stop saying gravity.
that's exactly
Gravity
right.
is not real. Why are you talking about gravity?
Yes.
It's
Because we're talking about
pseudoscience.
machines
It's not
that
real.
measure it. Now shut the fuck up unless you've got something
It's
decent
not
to add to the
real.
So-
It's
conversation.
pseudoscience.
So-
Why are we? Let's talk about the curvature, man. There is no curvature. Why are we talking about
So-
That's a condition
pseudoscientific
2
force?
violation. Hip hop, that's a condition 2 violation. So stop.
What are you
So
talking
the-
about, man?
Thank you very much,
You're
Tony. I
talking about
appreciate it.
something that cannot be proven. It's not real. It only exists in your fantasy.
Get on your
It's a
bathroom
condition 2
scales
violation.
and see what that does.
Please stop.
What do you
Why
think
don't you guys prove curvature? Why don't you guys prove curvature?
Yeah, cool.
Why
If you
can't
just want to
do
go, if you just want to go to mctoon.net/r, and then you can stop talking, okay?
Stop
So the-
that? So you can't
So-
prove curvature?
The
Apart from all the
The-
measurements of curvature, of course.
What curvature?
Yeah,
There is no
he's
curvature.
he's trying to derail the conversation.
I know,
because,
it's all he can do. Hip Hop Hippie's
You guys are
entire
talking
so-
about assumptions.
Hip Hop
You're
Hippie's
talking
entire
about
Hip Hop Hippie's
hypotheticals.
just Hip Hop Hippie's entire stick
We're
is
not
going.
talking about reality.
Hip Hop
We're not
Hippie's
talking about reality.
Will you stop talking? Hip Hop Hippie's entire stick is to go what gravity, what curve. Then we will present evidence of gravity and curve, and he'll go what gravity and what curve. The reason for that is because he is an objective retard. Like he actually has some mental damage. Like Hip Hop Hippie, do you remember when you were young? Did your parents drop you on your head several times, or did they get like a ballpoint hammer and just smash you in your forehead over and over? Because that's what it sounds like when you talk.
Easy.
Nice ad hom. Nice
No,
ad
no,
homs.
I'm asking a
Hey,
question.
Craig.
That's all you got. That's all you got is ad homs. That's it.
Yes, Bob.
That's all you can handle.
Craig.
That's all you can throw at me.
Did you by chance see my 5 conditions for flat Earth debates? Condition number 2 is they don't get to define science.
Oh,
Would
yeah,
you
no,
agree with those conditions?
absolutely. I've tried saying this several
Okay.
times to flat earthers that they do not get to redefine terms that are already defined. So it's simple.
And
If
quite
I-
frankly,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, no scientific study in the history of science has ever been disproven because somebody had logical fallacy Tourette's.
Yeah.
So logical fallacies don't work.
Right.
We live
And-
in a Newtonian world. We've
and-
measured curvature and the
You guys
size
are
of the
talking about
Earth.
models.
Right,
Models are a
Hip Hop
reification
Hippie,
fallacy.
Hip Hop Hippie, let
That's
me
all you
just
guys
break
have done.
Hip Hop Hippie, let me break this down for you, okay? You asked
Condition
where
one
is
violation.
you asked where is the curvature. If you go to the website mctoon.net/r, there is an entire list of measurements of the radius of the Earth. There is the curvature. Stop sounding like a retard.
How can you measure
Craig,
the
I got
radius of
some-
the Earth when you say it's apparent? You don't have.
I've
a
never said
radius.
the radius of the Earth is apparent, you fucking mental
Yes, you
deficient.
have. Dude. The last debate we had, you admitted that your radius is apparent.
No,
because
I said the
horizon is
horizon.
apparent.
I said the apparent position of the horizon. The apparent position of the horizon is what's apparent. The
You said
radius
you said
never
the
fucking
radius
changes.
Is apparent. You
No,
said the radius is apparent because
didn't.
the horizon is apparent. Yes.
No, the
Yes, you
radius
did.
is always the radius.
Yes, you did.
Hippie. No, if you're just going to
You
spout
used a
nonsense,
poli-
I'm going to boot you. All right?
I'm just
You
telling
made
you
the
what you
mistake
said.
of using-
Go back and look
you
at it.
made the
You
mistake
said
of
that.
using polysyllabic
You've
words
misremembered what he said. You've
when
mixed
dealing
up the
with
fact
hippie,
that
and
the
I don't think that
horizon's
was
apparent
advisable.
With the radius, he's not said the radius is apparent ever. You've misremembered.
Yeah.
All
So-
that was roboted, Rumpus.
Right, so hip hop hippie, right, once
that- say
again,
that
this
again.
is very simple for you, okay? If you want to know where the curvature is, you can go and look at all the measurements of the curvature. If you don't do that,
How can you measure
no,
something
stop,
that's not
stop, I'm
there?
talking,
It's not
I'm
there.
talking.
There is no curvature. How can you have measurements of curvature when there is no
Well,
curvature?
how can we have
I
exactly?
measured it myself.
Exactly. How can we have measurements of curvature if there isn't curvature? The fact that we have measurements of curvature disproves your ridiculous premise. Now, go and look at the website mctoon.net/r. Then you can come back to the conversation once you have something to add. Okay? Because just going reification fallacy. There's no curve. There's no gravity. Adds nothing to the
model is a
conversation.
reification fallacy.
Adds
Prove me
nothing.
wrong.
Adds
A
nothing to the
model is a
conversation.
reification fallacy.
Shut up.
Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
You don't know what a mathematical model is. Therefore, you are wrong. Okay. So if you
Why
can
don't you
actually,
prove me wrong?
if you
Math
could,
is not
I
reality.
personally measured the radius of the Earth, so you're done.
yeah, we
Doing what? Doing what? What'd you do?
Nothing that you could understand.
Yeah. So hip hop hippie,
go
I'll say
away
this
and read
once.
the
Hip hop
documentation.
hippie, I'm going to say this.
Another
Hip hop
ad
hippie,
hoc.
hip hop hippie, I'm going to say this to you once more. We have measurements of the curvature of Earth. If you can go and refute those, actually with a mathematical explanation or something, that's fine. But just parroting reification.
How did you measure it? How did you measure it?
Right.
How did you measure it?
Do you want me to mute you, or are you going to
It's
be having an
over on
adult
the other
conversation?
website. Please go
Shall we
there.
quickly tell him?
In the
Shall we quickly tell him
meantime,
how you do it?
Mind of God.
I just want to get the point out to Hippo Hippie here that we have measurements, all right? We have all this stuff that you keep asking for. Stop.
How did you measure it?
Will you stop interrupting when I'm talking? Right? Stop parroting Nathan Oakley. I know you can taste his balls in your mouth, but stop parroting him and actually go and learn something. Go and look at the website, mctoon.net/r, before you say once again there is no curvature. Yes, Rumpus, go ahead.
I'm not Nathan Oakley, dude.
Hip hop. The way Bob has done it, and other people have done it, and it was done in the 11th century, was by measuring the dip angle from the horizontal to the horizon. So if you get up a tall mountain, you work out where the horizontal is.
We did that,
and
Rumpus.
from that,
man. Just
mind of God, don't interrupt. Let Rumpus finish what you're saying, please.
Just let me finish. Only 5 more seconds. So just by measuring the dip angle to the horizon, I know it's the apparent horizon, but it's close enough to the geometric horizon to mean there's a small error. And if you do that, you personally can go and do this. Do what Bob did. Just simply measure the dip angle from the horizontal to the horizon of some water that's not, it's the right level.
The horizon changes all the time. You can't get an accurate measurement. The horizon's going to change constantly.
Not by enough.
Oh, yes, it is. It's enough to disprove your globe.
Hold on. If you're on a clear day and you go up high up a mountain, so there's no movement of the horizon, you will get something within about 5% of the radius of the Earth. That's how it's done. Right. That's that sort of
This is just an attempt to derail the conversation.
Yeah, I know.
Mind of God was going to respond to the existence of gravimeters and its attention-seeking behavior.
I would like to discuss that. So this is a real device. Do you know roughly the cost of something like this? Is it super research?
You can look up companies. There are companies that make them. This is part of. I will point out that actually. I will also point out that at the high end, we have a super high resolution, superconducting gravimeter at the local observatory, and it is sensitive enough that it can detect changes in gravity due to storms passing overhead, or changes in gravity due to remote earthquake events. So they can be. The field versions are sensitive enough that you can identify subsurface mineral deposits, but you can make them much, much more sensitive than that.
Tony, what are the requirements of what it's measuring? 1 second. What are the requirements of what it's measuring? Can it measure any type of mass, or does it have to be a specific type? Does it have to be a conductor or anything?
No, it's measuring acceleration.
No, it doesn't have to be a conductor.
Okay, I'm just asking. So, literally, 1 second. If I put a cube of plastic, one mass, and another one, let's just say ideally infinitely sensitive.
No, it's not trying to do that, Mind of God. It's just...
No, I'm just asking him... 1 second.
It has a
I'm asking him what...
inside it.
Yeah, but I'm saying what mass is outside of it.
There's no masses involved here. The other mass is the
how
Earth,
does this work?
And the other mass is a little test mass inside it. You do not change that.
Say that once more.
Yeah.
So Tony, it's not measuring something. Go for
just
it.
quickly, Tony.
So,
you said it could change angle, but what does it measure the angle with respect to? Because given the fact that I would have thought the only angle it knows is down to the centre of the Earth, how does it know where the centre of the Earth, unless it's got some GPS thing involved in it or something? This is what the angle I'm measuring is.
So what you do here is that you set up, if you want to solve for the downward gradient, you actually need 3 accelerometers that are set up perpendicularly to one another.
Right. So you take you take the total sum of all the vectors.
Yeah, that's right. And so you can
so
solve for the
now,
gravitational vector.
Now I know what term you're using. Sorry, that term accelerometer was what I'm more familiar with.
Okay,
they use that in directional drilling. Well, they use it in directional drilling, but it's a measure of orientation.
All right, let Rumpus respond.
Tony, God.
Sorry,
yeah, Tony, but surely the only angle you've got is what you perceive as down, and you were saying it could measure. What I presume you were saying was that how down differed from where not being pointed to the centre of the Earth, and if the only thing
what you're actually measuring is the gradient of the downward. So you're measuring changes in the magnitude As the magnitude of that downward force varies, you can calculate the gradient across it. So
Gravity is not a force.
You are.
Oh,
Why
hip
isn't
hop
it a
hippie,
force?
stop being a
Hip-hop, dude,
retard.
just chill for a second.
Would
dude.
you
Just
be?
relax.
Would you agree with the idea that since you have a fixed mass, what you're doing is you're getting the direction, the vector, which includes the magnitude and direction.
Yep,
of
that's
the acceleration
that's
of
right.
gravity.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, I just want to read out a super chat I've just got quickly from Tommy Gronveld for 50
But hey,
Nokias.
no, you're trying to squirm away from that. I want to.
One sec, mind God.
Yeah.
So Tommy Gronveld for 50 Nokias says that, whoa, the awesome amount of combined IQ across the board. I think he's obviously talking about the fact we've got Bob the Science Guy, we've got an actual PhD guy here, me and Team, which are relatively intelligent, and then along comes Hip Hop Hippie. There is no curve. Seems we've lost, guys. It's flat. Hip Hop Hippie, if you don't have anything more to add to the conversation than there is no curve, reification fallacy, gravity's not real, then you can fuck off. Okay?
I'm just listening, man. I'm trying to.
Now that we're using terminology that
Craig,
I'm familiar with, because
guys,
the
hold
last
on one
company I
second.
worked for.
All right, one sec,
Craig,
Team, yeah.
Will you send me a new?
Go for it.
Will you send me a new join link? I cannot. It's everything is choppy coming through. I can't.
Yeah,
I
sure.
haven't heard anything anyone said for like the last 10 minutes.
All right, no worries. I'll send you a new one. I'll just close this one out and send you a new
Craig?
one.
All right.
Craig, could I make a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead.
Boot the next person that mentions the word fallacy or a meme point.
Yeah, I will. Hip Hop Hippie, if you bring up any of the ridiculous flat earth talking points like reification fallacy, there is no curve, you're just going to get booted because it doesn't add anything to the conversation and shows that your IQ is so low that you don't know enough to be part of the conversation, all right? So
Orthogonal is allowed.
If you have anything
Orthogonal is
intelligent
okay.
to add to the conversation, feel free. But the next time you bring up one of the ridiculous Nathan Oakley talking points that you like to guzzle down so much, you are getting booted.
I just like to talk about curvature,
We'll get
I
there.
don't see what the problem is.
Once you can talk about curvature once you've gone and looked at the website mctoon.net/r. Then we can talk about curvature, okay?
So this is good. We're talking about a device that I haven't used, but I work for a company that's a directional drilling company, so I can ask people about accelerometers. So I didn't realize that's what you meant when you said gravometer or whatever you were talking about. So if we're talking about accelerometers, they are used in directional drilling, and so I could do a little bit of research on that, and people who have used them.
Well, if
you what they need to do.
you apparently worked for a mineral exploration company, ask them to explain how gravimetric mineral exploration works.
In seismic,
I'm just kind of something, mind of God.
For seismic.
I'm just curious, mind of
it.
God.
It's not
If they use
seismic, it's
accelerometers,
gravimetric.
do you not know why they use them?
Let me finish with this guy first, Bob. Sorry, what was the point?
Tony.
I forget your name. Tony. Sorry.
You asked if it was seismic. No, it's gravimetric.
But I'm just wondering, why would they use that in a seismic experiment to image the subsurface? That's
They're not using it. They don't use it in seismic exploration.
Yeah, he didn't bring
because
this up.
I don't know if he said that. I wasn't sure.
They use it. It's a different form of mineral surveying. So there are multiple ways of exploring for minerals. There are magnetotelluric techniques that rely on the conductivity of the material underlying the Earth's surface.
I've heard of that.
There's seismic exploration, and there's gravimetric exploration. So there are the three techniques.
But why do you think the company I work for?
Your company will at least the people who understand geophysics in your company will be familiar with the concept of gravimetric exploration, and they will probably have been trained in it in their undergraduate training. So they will know about it even if they don't use it.
Fair enough. I'll consider that. Not trying to be defensive. Okay, sure.
Now, Hip Hop Hippie, do you have anything intelligent to add to the conversation?
I'm just listening.
I mean, it's not a real question because we all know the answer is no. Sorry, guys, carry on.
Well, I think you guys are just kind of being boring talking about gravity. What is gravity? Define it.
So it's
we're trying to measure it first.
It's a force.
Well, how can you measure something that they can't even define, dude?
There you go,
Well,
Greg.
they claim that you can.
It's a circle jerk.
Right.
Just a circle jerk.
Last warning, Hip Hop Hippie. add intelligently to the conversation, or you're going.
And don't
right?
interrupt. Someone is trying to give you an answer.
Yeah. If you want a description of gravity, it depends what kind of description do you want. Do you want a Newtonian description? Do you want an Einsteinian description? Or do you want a description based on high-end particle physics? Up to you. You're not going to understand any of them, but it doesn't matter. If you want a basic description of, if you want a basic, wait. If you, no, there's different ways to describe it, right? Now, if you want a basic description of what gravity is, it is what causes the apparent attraction of all masses to each other. It is what causes the measurable force that causes an acceleration downwards towards the Earth of apparently 9.8 meters per second. It is the warping of space-time due to pressures from mass that causes things that would be traveling in a straight line to travel a geodesic in space-time instead and accelerate towards the bigger mass. Now, there were different explanations, but they all were the same thing. Do you understand?
I know you believe.
No, I don't believe any of that. I don't believe anything of that. That is facts around what we are talking about. Did you understand anything about what I just said?
Yes. I went to school.
I
know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, Rumpus, go ahead.
Right, gravity is an umbrella term. Sometimes it's also, some people might have done this in the past. When I talk about gravity, I mean the force of gravity. But if we were more specific, we would say gravity is the bending of space-time, which is caused by mass. And then we would just say specifically the force of gravity is the Newtonian equation that we all know, the universal gravitational law, and the thing that you feel underneath your feet, and the thing that's measured on scales. And the Newtonian form, the Newtonian gravity, the force, is a function of the 4D space-time. And in our 3D world, we perceive that 4D bending of space as a force. And that force is the thing that's measured on your bathroom scales, and that also all space missions use to drive things off to other planets, and it works perfectly well. They don't have to worry about the field equations in general relativity. But the force equation of gravity is derived from the field equations defined by Einstein. So gravity is an umbrella term, and the force of gravity is Newtonian equation. I don't know if that's...
He didn't understand a word of that. You know that, right?
But we were doing so well trying to measure it.
At this?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Can I take a shot at that?
All right, Bob first, and then we get to Tony. Bob, go ahead.
Okay, hip-hop.
Hey, fight.
Hip-hop.
Fight.
Yo. Team, what's up?
Oh, I've got to get out of here, man. I'm about to send you an audio file on Discord so you can see what I'm dealing with. But there's no way for me to contribute to this conversation because I can't even understand what anybody's saying.
All right, no worries, bud.
It's just cutting out real bad. So let me get out of here before Bob starts. Guys, thank you. I love everybody in the audience. Thanks for supporting the channel. I have a video that is recorded tonight. Will be going out tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks very much, team. Sorry you couldn't join in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's get to Bob first.
No problem. Y'all take care.
Let's get to Bob first, and then we'll go to Tony. Bob.
Okay. Hip hop. How you doing, man?
Doing good.
Great. Hey, do you have deer where you live?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You ever see a deer on the side of the road? Like a little herd of deer kind of grazing on the grass on the side of the road? We have a lot of them here in Michigan, is the reason that I'm asking. So when I go down a road and I see a bunch of deer on the side of the road, I kind of go over into the other lane and pass around them and then go back into my lane. You ever do that?
Sure. What does this have to do with the shape of the deer?
This has to do with gravity. Did the deer cause you to go into the other lane, or did you go into the other lane because of the presence of the deer?
What does this have to do with...
Just answer the question.
Why? It's irrelevant.
If you don't answer the question, you're getting booted. Answer the question.
Craig, that's not fair, dude.
No, hip hop hippie. If you don't answer the direct question, you are getting booted.
Back to mind of God.
No. Bob's asked you a question. We're gonna do this first.
I'm not answering those stupid questions either.
We're not asking you, Mog. So it's no worries, right?
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so I'll ask the question again. Now, when you go into the other lane and go around the deer, did the deer cause you to go into the other lane, or did you go into the other lane because the deer were there? Well, let me ask you an easier question. Does it matter?
No, it's a dumb question. It just doesn't make sense what we're talking about.
It's a fucking brilliant question. It's
It
an
is.
absolutely
Are you
brilliant
triggered?
question.
Are you triggered? Why can't we keep this on the shape of the Earth and gravity? What's going on?
Hip-hop,
We are
hip-hop,
talking about gravity.
pay attention.
All
No,
right.
we're
So
not. We're not talking
can
about
you
gravity.
answer
Go
the
back to Mind of
question?
God.
Can you
Go
Hip-hop,
back
hippie,
to
answer
Mind
the
of God.
question. No, hip-hop,
Go back to
hippie,
Mind
we're
of
doing...
God.
No, do you want to be booted? Last chance.
Hip hop, just indulge him for a second, and then we can get past this.
No, Bob?
No, it's retarded. I agree with hip hop.
let
This
me
is
ask you?
nonsense. Like,
Let me ask you. Let me go ahead and ask you an easier question. Does it matter if the deer caused you to go over, or you went over because of the presence of the deer? Did it change the result of what you did?
I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about the shape of the Earth and
All right,
gravity.
bye.
Okay, well, allow me,
Hip-hop, hippie's
allow
gone.
me
Thank you.
to
Take
It's
care.
all right. Hip-hop, hippie's gone. He's
Allow-
had nothing to add to the conversation.
Thank you.
So
yeah, why doesn't
Okay.
Bob
All
ask
right.
a baller
So
that same
just to
question?
just
That's
to
fine.
clarify everything.
Yeah,
the
you
bottom
ask me
line
the
is,
same
according
question.
to Newton.
yeah, ask Tony the
go.
question,
Who's
Bob.
this?
There you go.
That's Tony.
Tony.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bear in
I don't
mind,
know.
I'm
I
Australian,
don't know.
and so actually it's kangaroos.
Well, so am I.
Yeah.
Yeah, so am I. I'm an honorary Aussie. I was made an honorary Aussie.
You're an honorary Aussie, okay.
I'm an honorary Aussie, which means the drop bears leave me alone. So
Oh, well, that's a step in the right direction.
yeah, it is. I have to speak in an Australian accent though to avoid them. So if I'm driving down the road, do the deer cause me to go to the other lane, or do I go to the other lane because the deer are there? And does it change the path of my car?
Yeah. So I would argue that it was the second one, but the difference between the two is immaterial. It doesn't matter which of the two options is true. It doesn't affect the course of the car. The course of the car was the same either way.
Correct, and then you also know the follow up on that. If the deer had moved me over, that would have been a Newtonian reaction, and if I moved over because of the presence of the deer, that would have been an Einsteinian reaction. However, the end result of both was exactly the same. Thank you very much, Tony.
Exactly.
I appreciate having somebody on board.
Wow, did you see how that worked? Someone asked the question, and then the question got answered. That's amazing. Wow.
The problem is no one understands the analogy. It's just nonsense.
I'm not sure it quite works.
Well, that's because you don't know the difference between Einstein and Newton. That's very simple. And
sure.
Quite frankly, my deer analogy sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, but the trouble is, one of them was a conscious decision by the driver, and the other one was caused by the deer. Those aren't necessarily the same thing, whereas you are saying they are.
No, that's not what we're referring to. The deer did not move me.
You need to.
I moved because of the presence of the deer.
All right, me and Rob are against you three.
Anyway, gravimeters.
Yes.
I'd like to bring it back to Mind of God's discussion about gravimeters.
Please. Yes, because I can actually
now
ask
I have
about that.
So your follow up is to go and ask people about that, and you don't want to comment or respond to that now.
Well, I want
because
to know
I do have another example I can use. Okay, so it's just measuring
what its ability to measure. Is that not a reasonable question?
So it's measuring the change in acceleration of the. It's measuring the change in force applied to the weight between the springs.
Yeah, but your claim is that mass, just mass itself, is a unique thing in this gravitational field, right? So I want to know that what is sensitive enough to just distinguish between various masses, just the mass, little mass and more mass, right? That would be something that could measure gravity.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
okay. So now
that's correct.
The mass, mind of God, the same mass is in the machine at all times. It's checking the weight. It's measuring the weight of that mass, i.e., it's the acceleration due to gravity. The mass is not changing inside the equipment. It's just measuring its weight and how that varies with the position on the ground and its latitude, etc., etc.
So if I take a gravimeter at a fixed distance from the surface, say over a short distance, say the same distance as your seismological surveys. If it's 9.81 at one point, and then I move it a little bit, and it's 9.812. That means that there's something slightly denser closer to the second position than to the first position. Does that make sense?
Tony, if you were to lift up one of these things by say 10 meters, would it be able to detect that difference, that height change?
The more high-end ones certainly would, yes.
Wow.
And indeed,
wow.
This is a technique that, well, bear in mind, these things are sensitive enough to detect the gravitational signal due to seismic waves. So they are, at the high end, these things are extremely sensitive. But the industrial ones that are sort of moved around aren't necessarily that sensitive, but they do things like ground-based surveys and then aerial gravimetric surveys where they fly the gravimeter around.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And of course they do. And that allows them to actually estimate the depth. So if you've got ground-based and air-based, and you know the altitude above the ground-based, you can actually calculate the attenuation of the gravity field, and that gives you an idea of sort of the depth of the mass anomaly that you're looking at.
Is this different than a piezoelectric? Is this different than a piezoelectric accelerometer, or is it the same principle, or is it fundamentally different construction? It is the same?
I'm not sufficiently familiar with the design of a piezoelectric accelerometer, but it's the same general thing. They're moving, they're detecting accelerations of a basic object.
It's exactly there's a big difference. There's a big difference in this one. There's a big difference in this one because this actually converts a physical force, which is not what gravity is. It's action at a distance. So this is very, very different into an electrical signal.
I would suggest that you refrain from baldly inaccurate declarative statements of that sort.
Sorry, Ken. Sorry.
Well, it's not.
That's nonsense.
The action at a distance, how the force is created, and how you do end up with a force at a point. It's got nothing to do with whether it's action at a distance. We're talking about just the force that is at a position. How that came to be, whether it's an instantaneous Newtonian idea or the bending of space-time, is irrelevant. We're just measuring the force, the acceleration that is measured by this device. That's all. The action at a distance part.
You can call it gravity, or you can just call it the pressure that piezoelectric is experiencing.
Well, allow me.
Hold on. Quick question. Do you know the difference between pressure and force, Mike?
No, he doesn't.
Pressure is force applied to a surface, right? And that's what this would be measuring.
Hold on.
Pressure is force divided by area.
Over a surface.
Mind of God, could you please give me the mathematical definition of pressure, please?
He just said the equation, so it's kind of easy.
What was that? What did he say then? Okay, you're going to
force over area, over surface area.
Yes,
force applied perpendicular to a surface.
Right. Did you know that before he said it?
No.
Come on, Rumpus, you talking to me for the first time today? Really?
Well, I mean, you sounded so you didn't
understand. All my transcripts are
why did you mention pressure? Then why did you mention pressure inside of gravity?
That's what this thing would be measuring and converting it to an electrical signal. Yeah, because that object is pushing.
There's nothing to do with pressure. There's nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
It's not using crystals. It's not using a. So
if this force is applied
I said
to any surface,
early on.
Right.
I said early on that I don't understand the physical principles by which a piezoelectric accelerometer works. If you're going to use that to claim that a gravimeter, I explain the physical principles by which the gravimeters I am familiar with work. Okay, they're mechanical. I am also in a position to comment on a satellite mission that measures Earth's gravitational field because I developed the code to integrate the satellite orbits and calculate the partial derivatives of the satellite orbits with respect to mass anomalies on Earth's surface and underneath Earth's surface.
Sounds complicated.
Let's talk about that next. Let's talk about that next. We'll wrap up this one first, and then
okay.
Sure, that's fine. So take home for me, I guess, is if I can talk to somebody who actually uses these devices, I need to find out what's inside their accelerometers for the company that I used to work for.
They're mechanical. They're not piezoelectric.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I need to ask them.
So you can.
Right, mind of God, let me ask you a simple question. A simple question, okay? If you have a mass that has accelerated, what do you have?
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
I mean, it's actually on the end of a spring, so all you measure is the extension of the spring, in effect.
Yeah, so which means that the mass has moved, which means there's been an acceleration that's taken place, right?
It's got more weight, and the weight of this thing varies, and therefore that changes the extension of the spring, and that's what's measured.
So it goes back to the simple question: I've got a mass and I've got an acceleration that can be measured. So what do I have? What can I calculate with those two things?
I know what you're trying to tell me.
Well, answer the question. What can I calculate? If I've got the mass and I've got a known acceleration, what can I calculate?
There would have been a real force to create that. Fair enough.
Force. Thank you. Force.
Right.
That is what this thing is measuring. It is measuring the fact that the mass literally has to change position slightly to cause a tension in the spring for it to tell you the differences in gravity that are so minute.
No, F equals ma is not a contentious point. Don't worry, I'm not trying to redefine those relationships. So my only issue is whether it's physical or not.
All right, Tony,
go
ahead.
So we've used this gravimeter. We've moved this gravimeter around. We've observed this change in force. Okay. It must be a physical force. I don't know what a non-physical force would even refer to. I don't either.
That's what gravity is.
No, gravity is an emergent force.
It isn't. That is a meaningless assertion. Please refrain from them.
It's an inertial force, but it behaves like any other force.
Yeah.
But Rumpus, why did you get so offended when I brought up pressure with the accelerometer? Why did that trigger you so much? It's just the force acting.
Because there's a distinction.
Okay.
Sorry, Tony, go on.
Okay, so
why you got so
the next step, once we've observed the change in weight, the next step, which is what the geophysicists do, is to turn that observed change in gravitational acceleration into a subsurface density distribution. And in order to do that, they invoke the universal Newton's law of gravitation, the G m1 m2 over r squared. Now, if that is not accurate, if, as you claim, mass does not attract mass, then the density anomaly maps that they develop cannot be physically meaningful. If you are suggesting using this gravimeter. So the gravimeter makes observations. Now we mathematically process the observations to work out where the mass anomalies that cause those observations. We are assuming here that those changes in gravitational acceleration are due to mass anomalies below Earth's surface. And we operate under that assumption. We derive a density distribution underneath the surface of the Earth, and we use that to identify potential locations for mineral deposits. Now, if the Newtonian law of gravitation, G m1 m2 over r squared, is untrue, is unphysical, is meaningless, then the derived density distributions cannot be meaningful. They cannot be accurate.
You're connecting two things that are not.
Why? Why?
Because mass can produce a force, can produce pressure. That has not proven mass attracts mass. That's obvious. That works no matter what shape anything is. Like, mass has the ability to create a force and put pressure on, let's say, a piezoelectric crystal. That's not a debate. That's just
not
obvious.
From underneath. It can't.
Right, but do you accept the Cavendish result then, mind of God?
I don't actually know much about that, but it sounds stupid.
It's just two lead balls or four lead balls, and they works out the force between them using a torsion bar. And from positioning the heavier balls and moving them, you see that the other balls are attracted, and you measure that with a torsion bar. So therefore, you can prove, and because it's horizontal, you eliminate the gravitational force of the Earth, and you just get the gravitational force between the masses you're playing with. And you can measure the fact that they're attracted by one another because the torsion bar moves as you move one mass close to another.
Yeah, and the important thing about the Cavendish experiment is that the whole thing has the gravitational acceleration downwards acting on it, right? That is uniform across the whole thing. So you're able to calculate the gravitational acceleration in a linear fashion, because everything has that 9.8 meters per second acting on it downwards, which means that you can, if you introduce a mass to move another mass, you can tell that there's a sideways acceleration, which shows that gravity isn't just something going down, it's towards whatever the mass is.
But Craig, can
Can
I address Rumpus's point? Can I do the Cavendish first? So you're telling me that those
before
two
you
masses,
do that, let me get my point out here, and that is that let's just demonstrate exactly why you're not a scientist, mind of God. You made a very clear statement that said you didn't understand very much about the Cavendish experiment, but it was stupid. If you don't understand something, why do you have an opinion on it that it's
I'll explain
stupid?
that. That's a good point. That's a fair point. My issue with that is that if those two things, any two masses, can be isolated to interact with one another and overcome the tremendous force that Earth is providing on those two, why is this? Why are we even having this discussion?
Nothing is overcoming anything. That's the thing. The downward acceleration of 8 meters per second squared, that doesn't go anywhere. That's acting on the entire apparatus. Okay. What you are measuring is the attraction in a linear fashion between the balls. Right?
Horizontal.
So this is a vector sum.
Right.
So
can I just come in here?
Right.
Can I just come in here? The point is the gravitational field of the Earth is downwards, one dimension, and the device, the Cavendish device, is all about horizontal attraction.
Good.
Therefore, you've eliminated the gravitational force due to the Earth because it's in a separate dimension.
Excellent. So what's unique about the Cavendish's mass than any other mass that we see, in the world? Like what's unique about that?
Nothing.
No, there's nothing unique about it.
I'm asking Rumpus.
It's just a way of measuring. It's just a way you need, as it's in the video here, you need a very sensitive device to measure the gravitational attraction between balls. I think in the case of the Cavendish, they're about 300 pounds on each side. So that you need a very sensitive device. But we know that you need something as big as the Earth to get a substantial force that is very easily measured. The torsion bar thing here is still the only way of measuring the force because it's so slight. I think it's the weight. It's less than the weight of a grain of rice. The force in here. It's incredible what is going on in terms of measuring.
So 300 pounds.
Let me see if I can help you out here a little bit. Let me see if I can help you out here a little bit.
Not in this video, but in Cavendish's original experiment, they were 300-pound balls. The one you're being shown here is a miniaturized version. Sorry, Bob, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Not a problem.
What the
Not a
hell
problem.
is
I'm
this,
used to it. So let me go ahead and see.
This is the Cavendish experiment.
Mind of God. Yeah, let me see if I can help you out here a little bit. Mind of God. Say I have two magnets sitting on my desk, and the magnets are exactly the same size. Would you agree that the force of gravity on those magnets going downward is the same? It affects both magnets the same.
Man? I mean, you're asking me to affirm gravity acting on magnets, right? That's what you want.
We're asking
magnets
you to
have mass.
play along.
They're sitting on my desk. They're sitting on my desk. Would you agree that the downward force on both those magnets, since they both weigh exactly the same, they have the same amount of mass, is exactly the same? So if you put the magnets in such a position where the north and the south end are near each other and they slide towards each other, would you agree that you could determine that that was due to the attraction of the magnets and not due to any downward force?
You're talking. First of all, the whole point of the downward acceleration, you're assuming that I agree that even exists. So I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, you can't deny there's a downward acceleration, mind of God.
Yeah, that's not even a question. That's as Dr. Phil said
earlier. That's
a fact.
Literally,
both of them.
Yeah. There is no way to deny there is a downward acceleration. Like Bob's saying, if he's got two magnets that have the same mass, then according to our model and our explanations, they are both going to have the same gravitational acceleration acting on them. Okay? Do you accept that premise for now?
Sure, fair enough. You can say,
so any movement that those things have towards each other is not due to gravitational. It's the magnetic force attracting them to each other, because it's 90 degrees to the gravitational force. That's the same way the Cavendish experiment works.
Let's play that video again with the small balls. So what material, if we use like plastic or any other material, that will still work?
No,
right?
no. We're not going back to another video. You're going to answer the question first, Mind of God. Do you agree that the force pulling those magnets across my desk is solely due to the magnetic attraction of them?
You're asking me if gravity is so strong towards the center of the Earth and negligible in between 2 points, which means that I accept F equals m1 m2 over r squared times whatever that is.
Well, you don't
You're
have a
asking me
choice
to
in
accept
that.
that.
All right.
Well, I do have a choice, and I don't have to be. I don't have to be a retard and accept that.
Can
I just start with a really basic point?
And they're sitting on my desk.
One sec, Rumpus.
They are both affected by gravity exactly the same way. Gravity does not move them together. The only thing that moves them together is the magnetic force attracting them to each other.
No, you guys believe that there's actually a gravitational attraction between them as well. You guys believe that just simply by having
Okay, so there obviously would be a tiny gravitational attraction between them.
You clowns are always tiny, negligible. You don't quantify anything, so I don't know what. Don't give me these vague.
We quantify it exactly. We can easily.
How heavy are the magnets?
All right, one sec. Rumpus wanted to.
What are the masses of the magnets?
Well, guys, one sec. Right.
What are the masses of the magnets?
Mind of God, be quiet. One sec.
It's irrelevant.
Guys, right.
No,
Rumpus
it
wanted.
matters because M1.
Mind of God, stop. Mind of God, stop.
Sorry.
Right. Rumpus wants to say something, and then we'll go to Tony. Okay. So Rumpus.
Mind of God. Thanks. Thanks. Mind of God, you do accept that when you get on your bathroom scales, those are force measuring devices, and they measure your weight. Do you accept that?
You can. We would use different terminology, but yeah, that's fine.
Do you accept they're measuring a force? Do you accept that scales measure a force?
Do I accept that scales measure a force? It would be a pressure.
Oh my God! You see, you don't understand.
Yeah, it's a force against the surface. So yeah, but that's fine. Yeah, it's a force. Sure. Yeah, it's fine.
You don't understand.
Hold on, can I just put right? So so similarly, if you picked up the scales and you pressed them between your hands, you would exert a force on those scales, and they would register the force between your hands.
Correct.
It's got nothing to do with pressure. Yeah. You could change the pressure however you liked. It's the force they're measuring, and that's why you don't.
You said on a
really
scale.
Understand the difference? Yes, scales are measuring a force, nothing to do with pressure. You could change the pressure, whatever you like. It's the net force that we're talking about. Right, so you have accepted, it seems to me, for the first time in your life, that the bathroom scales are measuring a force. We call that force your weight, and we call that weight due to the force of gravity. So that's the starting point. And then we can go on to Bob's point of thing about the horizontal forces between magnets. But do you not understand those little magnets? The mass of those magnets are something like 10 to the minus 24 less than the mass of the Earth. And if you understand that, surely you understand that something that's 10 to the minus 24 less than something else means we can ignore that 10 to the minus 24 something else.
Well, you can ignore all of them in my worldview. So yeah, you can
ignore
the one.
That's actually not my point.
So can I?
Yeah,
that's not my point.
Right, let's pass this over to Tony a sec, and then we'll go back to Bob.
I'd actually like to. I apologise to Bob for doing this, but I'd actually like to step back to how we arrive at our formulation for gravity. Okay, so you understand.
Mind God, just listen for a second.
Okay, if you don't, well, I wouldn't mind.
So gravitational. I want to talk about gravitational potential energy versus magnetic potential energy. Do you understand? You seem to accept that magnetic potential energy exists, right? That there's a magnetic potential field.
Yeah.
You see, and
those are real things.
So
and so. What potential means.
No, I don't think he knows what potential.
Yeah,
means.
well, I'm about to.
Yeah, I would say a delta.
Okay.
It's a gradient.
It's his.
So if I take it.
Sorry.
Okay, so if I take an object to the, if I have a tall tower and I drop an object from it, do you accept that within the variances of air resistance, I can pretty much work out how that body is accelerating, and so I can accurately determine how fast it's going when it hits the ground. I can observe this and I can derive rules for it, right? You accept that, okay?
Yeah.
So if I take the same mass back up to the top of the tower and drop it again, am I going to get the same result?
How it impacts the Earth?
How fast it is when it, how fast it's going when it impacts the Earth. Again, modulo the air resistance. Okay, I'm going to get that. What if I take that mass, I drive it 100 kilometers north, and then I bring it back to the tower, take it up to the tower, and drop it? Is that going to change the speed with which it hits the surface?
Yes.
Why?
I don't think he understood what you meant by moving
we
100
could test
miles
it,
north. He didn't
I guess.
understand. He didn't understand. You
So,
took it away from somewhere important.
I put the mass in a car. I drive 100 kilometers north, and then I drive back to the tower.
Let me put it in more simplified terms. I'd rather a 5-pound mass hit me on the head an inch above my head than 10 feet, and then 100 feet.
Okay,
and then
so
1,000.
you seem to be ignoring. My point is, do you understand what a closed path is in mathematical terms?
No, you may have to define that for me.
Really? You're an electrical engineer?
Okay, so
A closed path? I don't know if he's talking about... I don't even know what context, maybe. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you define that.
Okay,
path.
so a
Unless you're talking about
closed
integrals,
path is
that's an integral.
Basically what I'm saying is that if you take a path integral that forms a closed loop, you end up with the same gravitational potential at any point, right? So if you pick a point, I expressed that poorly, let me try again. If I have a particular point, say at the top of the tower, and I drop stuff off and I want to know how much energy it has when it hits the ground, it doesn't matter what path the object takes to get back to the tower. As long as it gets back to the same point and I drop it from the same point, it will have the same energy when it hits the ground. Okay, it doesn't matter if I move it in a big circle, it doesn't matter if I spiral it around, when I drop it, it's still going to have the same energy, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make...
I'm trying to get to the fact that gravity is a conservative field. That the potential energy
possessed... You're not going to get me to jump on board with that. Maybe Rumpus can convince him.
Why
I don't know
not?
What you're talking about.
What observational evidence do you have that that the gravitational potential field is not conservative?
Do you agree with my statement that I'd rather be hit by something an inch than 5 feet?
I consider it. I don't know what you prefer, so I can't answer that question.
Well, then if you're just going to troll, what can we talk about then?
Well, if you're going, I'm trying
Christ.
to have a meaningful conversation here about the mathematical formulation that we use for gravitational potential and the similarity between that and electromagnetic potential fields. And you seem to be have no understanding, which I find surprising.
Yeah,
because
me too.
this is, if you know what a Bessel function is, then you ought to know.
He doesn't.
How
I use Bessel functions.
Okay, so you don't know what a Bessel function is.
The reason I quoted Bessel functions is if you go through Life is Short's video, he talks
so
about
you,
them, so I'm not...
you don't know...
Sorry, just must interrupt at this point. The Life is Short mentioned that once when he was quoting how Aries disks result. He mentioned nothing about the maths. He just simply picked up the definition of an Aries disk and then he copied it and he pasted it into his script. That's all he did, and he did it once. So the reference that you're suggesting that somehow Life is Short understands what a Bessel function is utterly ridiculous. I went and checked.
I mean, it's just a function, though. It's not like anything. It's just somebody has come up with a function, and there's different forms of it.
So do you know what a...
has values.
Do you know what a harmonic function is? Do you know what Laplace's equation is?
He doesn't.
I've used harmonics. I don't know what a harmonic
Right,
function
guys,
is.
I think the problem here is that Mind of God has lied about all of his qualifications and doesn't know the first thing about anything. He doesn't know the first thing about electrical engineering. He doesn't know the first thing about computer sciences. He doesn't know the first thing about physics in the slightest. Mind of God is an abject liar. Nothing he says is true. If you want to laugh, ask him how to calculate the resonance frequency of an inductive
Well, actually,
circuit,
that
for
was
instance.
dude. You asked me that last time, but Craig, do you know how that? Do you know how that's derived?
Yeah, well, I'm asking you.
quoted
Do
it.
you?
Yeah, you set the transfer function, the imaginary part, to 0.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't know that, but you quoted the value, like the omega, right? The
No,
1
I didn't.
over
I'm asking you. Do you know how to calculate a resonant frequency of an inductive circuit? Yes
yeah,
or no?
you get the transfer function of a circuit, and then you set its
Give me
imaginary
the
part to
formula.
0, and that frequency, whatever it is, omega 1 over root L or 2 LC or
1 over
like
2
that.
pi root 1 over 2 pi root.
Right, that.
You don't know
But
what
you
you're
didn't- you
talking
didn't know-
about.
but
Mind
you
of God,
didn't know-
I'm not even an electrical engineer, and I
didn't
know
know how
more
that was
about electrical
derived.
engineering than you do.
But you didn't know how that was derived. You have to
You,
get the
you didn't
transfer
even know what it
function.
was. You
Well,
don't
I
even
didn't know
know
the
the,
value.
you don't even know the basic shit about the thing you claim to have qualifications in.
But did you-
I
you know
am
what a
not
transfer
no,
function
I
is?
am not an electrical engineer, and I know
You know what a
more than
transfer
you
function
do.
is.
Can you
know
tell
what a
me how to
transfer
calculate the
function is.
resonant frequency of an inductive circuit? Yes or no?
Yeah,
Give me-
you set the imaginary part of its
Give me the
transfer
form.
function
No,
to
no,
0.
stop talking and give me the formula.
Well, it depends on what the circuit is. It would have to have real
No,
imaginary
there's
parts, right?
if you know the electrical engineering, you will know the formula to calculate a resonant frequency. There's a simple fucking formula.
It depends on the
Right. Okay.
circuit, Craig.
Right. So what you're saying is you
one
don't.
second,
No.
one
No. No.
second,
No.
one
No. Mind
second.
of God.
You
No.
quoted
Mind.
it.
No. No.
You
No.
quoted
No.
it
Mind
for
of God.
an
No.
RLC
Mind of God.
circuit.
No. Mind of God. No. You don't
quoted
know
it for an
what. Mind of
RLC
God.
circuit. That
You
applies
don't
for
know
any
what you're
complex
talking
circuit.
about. You don't know. You are a liar. You do not have
Craig, to
qualifications in
calculate.
elect.
Let
No.
me educate
Mind of
you.
God. No.
Let me
Stop.
educate
No.
you.
No. No.
Let me educate
No.
you.
Stop. I'm
To
talking.
calculate it
You don't. No.
for-
Stop talking. I'm
Go.
talking.
Okay.
All right.
Go.
You are a liar. You do not
Right.
have qualifications in electrical engineering.
Let me explain what that means.
Everything you have said proves that
Right.
you are an abject moron.
Let me explain what that means. So if you derive a transfer function for any kind of inductive with capacitance and a real part, you set its imaginary part to 0. That frequency is the resonant frequency, right? So you quoted it for an RLC circuit. Fair enough. You got it. You won. So, but I'm telling you the more general understanding. You have to derive a transfer function first.
Can I make an
output
observation?
voltage over the input.
Go ahead, Tony.
Go for it.
Okay, if you don't know what gravitational potential is, or how we come to the conclusion that gravity is a conservative field, then on what possible basis do you make any declarative statements about gravity?
I know that
this is basic high school physics here. I'm not using advanced physics, and I apologize to Bob because Bob had a point that he wanted to discuss, and I thought that it would be simple enough to teach anybody who was mathematically literate how gravitational potential fields work. And you've just proven my assumption that you were mathematically literate to be false. You don't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
That's
about gravity. No, I don't know. I don't know gravity for sure.
Okay, hold on.
I don't think
Mind of God, can you tell us? Hold on. Quick question, Mind of God. Can you work out what the electrical potential of something is that's some distance away? Go on, see if you can do that, Mind of God. That's really easy.
The electrical potential?
Of something, a charge. So I've got a charge. I've got two charges.
The electrostatic potential between two charges.
Yeah, the electrostatic potential. Thank you. Yes, I should.
But that's Coulomb's law.
Potential.
That's Coulomb's law.
No, Coulomb's law is a force. I'm talking
Fuck
about
me, you're stupid.
So you're mixing it up again. You're mixing up force and potential. This is why I said I didn't think you understood what potential means. So I'm asking you about two charges, say two identical charges separated by a distance r. What is the potential of the of one charge with respect to the other? How would you work that out? What's the formula?
I'll tell you now, Rumpus. He's no idea.
I don't remember.
Because he's
he's
outright lied about his qualifications.
Let him explain it. Explain it.
Well, that's why I said
how would you
when
do that?
Were talking about when Tony was talking about potentials, I said, "Hold on, you better make sure that Mind of God understands potentials." I didn't think he did. Well, the way you do it is you use the work done to get the charge from one place to the surface of the other one. So if it has a radius, it's actually the electrical charge divided by r of the thing. Well, if you grab one as a point charge, so I'm going to have a point charge, and it's the electrical potential divided by the radius of your spherical other charge. Let's assume it's got a size. So it's the work done to take a charge from one place to another. And usually, when you're talking about the potential with two charges, you say to the surface, if you've got a sphere at one charge, and you think of a point charge, usually from infinity, if you want to find out the potential of that point, the work done, do an integral of the work done, in other words, the forces that are applied, from all the way from infinity to the surface of the charge you wish to
Rumpus, he
consider.
doesn't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm prepared to believe him. You see, I believe that when people claim they got qualifications, usually they have. And I know Might Have Got seems like a dimwit, but yeah, I'm prepared to believe
everything Craig said is retarded. So how does anybody believe what
he keeps on going about where you can find them?
Right,
He's an absolute moron.
Thing is, you say fair enough, you've got to believe him. He says he's got qualifications, but he says he's an electrical engineer, and he doesn't even know the formula to calculate a resonant frequency. And I would just like to take.
Explain how to do it.
No, you didn't. You said a bunch of stuff that meant nothing, right? So I'm going to ask you.
Said that for one.
Mind of God, I'm going to ask you some very direct.
No, I'm not
questions.
answering questions, dude. If you're going to do this, this is
so no. If you want to stay on the panel, Craig, you're going to answer my questions.
Craig, you've never put anything. You've never put any of your qualifications or anything anywhere. So
apart from when I posted my degree on my community page that I got from the Institute of Nuclear Physics, Nuclear and Plasma Physics, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So
just go to my community page. It's there. Everyone's already seen it. But mind of God, you are an electrical engineer. Mind of God, stop talking. Mind of God.
If this ends up being a quiz thing, I'll just drop, dude. It's fine.
Well, if you want to run away, that's fine. But I would like to actually be able to.
Well, this is what happens when.
Mind of God, will you stop talking?
When I'm winning the argument, dude.
Do you want
what
to?
happens when you're losing the argument? You just start quizzing people, which you can.
No. One sec. One sec. What I'm trying to do here at Mind of God is to try ascertain what actual level of qualifications and intelligence you have. So if we are to be able to talk to you,
I'm not answering questions from somebody who's a very.
Do you want to stop interrupting me when I'm talking? Right.
I'll talk to Rumpus and Bob. That's
you're going to answer my questions, or you can go away. All right.
Not from you.
You can answer my questions, or you can go away.
You don't even know how the resonant frequency was derived. You don't even know what an
right. Mind of God, I'm going to ask you a question. If you don't answer it, I'm going to boot you.
You probably don't even know what the imaginary part is.
I'm going to ask you a question. If you don't answer it, you can go. All right.
Let's say 5 plus J. What's the
I'm asking you questions right now. So, in the formula for resonant frequency,
what's the transfer function?
I'm asking you questions. Listen or fuck off.
It's not a formula, you dummy. That's an answer to one transfer function. That's an RLC circuit.
Really.
So general understanding.
Really. So you've just shown that you know nothing about electrical engineering.
General understanding of resonant frequencies. You set the imaginary part of the transfer function to 0. Remember that and shut up.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you some simple questions, and if you don't answer, you can fuck off. Right, so
stupid to even understand what I just told
Mind of God, are you going to stop talking like a twat, or are you going to listen? You don't even know what a
transfer function is.
Are you going to listen, or are you just going to keep spouting nonsense? Your choice.
Well, you're so
you can either go away, or you can listen to what I'm saying.
You're quoting one formula that's the result of a general understanding of resonant frequencies.
And it's a very important formula that you didn't even know, right?
No, it's one circuit. That's not all circuits that can be made.
Are you telling me that the formula for... Right, stop talking. I'm going to mute you because you can't stop talking for a second. Right, listen to what I'm saying, mind of God. You're muted so no one can hear you right now. Listen for 2 seconds. Because I don't believe you have the intelligence to be involved in these conversations. If you have the qualifications that you say that you have, then I'm going to ask you some very simple questions that you will either answer or you can leave. So, in the formula to calculate a resonant frequency, F equals 1 over 2 times pi times the root of LC. What does L stand for?
This is horrible, dude.
What does L stand for? If you're an electrical engineer, in the formula for resonant frequency, 1 over 2 pi root LC, what does L stand for?
I'll drop, dude. This is getting...
So you don't know? So you don't know?
You're too smart for me, man.
Can you?
I do know. I'm not.
Do you want to try 9th grade physics, mind of God?
Yeah, he had to. He does.
So
I think he does know the answer.
He's going to sit here and touch.
He doesn't. You don't know the answer, do you?
You're going to test me on.
Do you know? Do you know the answer? Yes or no? Do you know the answer? Yes or no?
Capacitance and all these basic concepts, but you don't even know the general understanding of what I just
told you. Yeah, but you don't even know what L stands for in one of the most basic electrical engineering formulas.
I just told you what it is. I think it does.
May I?
Inductance in what? What do you measure it in?
Henry's.
And what does the C stand for, and how do you measure that?
Capacitance in it's capacitance.
In what? You were close.
For capacitance.
Faraday's.
In farads.
So
right.
He did
All right,
know
dude.
it,
I think this is my time to.
may I
go,
ask?
'cause it's getting weird.
May I make an observation?
Yes.
Okay, so previously, Mind of God was talking about the the orthogonality of gravitational acceleration and how it doesn't make any sense, and superposition doesn't make any sense. And he started talking about orthogonality as the inner product on a vector space. Have you had? And I am convinced that while you know what a vector space is, what you haven't done is sat down and determined the rules for the vector space that you're proposing, and you haven't defined an inner product function. You're just claiming some level of independence, as you now prefer to call it. That is actually physically and mathematically meaningless. And unless you can actually demonstrate some capacity for mathematical description and developing mathematical formalism, you're not going to be taken seriously. And you've basically blown your own cover here. Listening to you in the debate, it was not obvious to me that you were as ignorant as you turn out to be. I don't think you can list the properties of a vector field.
He doesn't know what a vector field is.
Well, if you've got a second, I've got a little way to just check some basic knowledge on him and reasoning skills. So, Mind of God, you're familiar with a bowling ball, right? So I've got two bowling balls. One is 8 pounds and one is 16 pounds. Do you agree that their surface area for air resistance is exactly the same because they're both regulation-sized bowling balls? That's a yes or a no.
I think he's left.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I was going to embarrass him on 9th grade physics, but that's okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm having issues with my computer.
Is it true that he was trying to actually assert that I wasn't a pilot and Wolfie was?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's kind of humorous.
He was
asserting. To have spent an awful lot of time learning to fly.
Yeah, it would. I think that this is the.
Considering
I think that this
own an
is
airplane,
the. Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that I think that flat earthers have trouble with. When Craig says that he has a degree in plasma physics, I, for one, am really impressed because I don't.
Well, it's in nuclear engineering, but obviously the award is from the Institute of Nuclear Engineering and Plasma Physics.
But even so, like, I don't have a degree. Obviously, I've got a PhD, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. But I am impressed, and I will defer to Craig's understanding in his field of study. The rumpus has demonstrated a much greater facility in calculating optical effects and refraction than I am capable of, and I respect that. I respect Bob's technical expertise and technical aptitude. Flat earthers don't respect anything. It seems like they don't have the capacity to recognize, well, actually, that's somebody who's put in some work and gained an understanding that I cannot reconstruct with just my intuitive abilities. They think that they just need to think about something for 2 seconds and bang, the answer's going to come to them.
Absolutely. The big problem with flat Earth in general is that they have to deny so much of very basic physics to keep their worldviews as it is. As we saw with Hip Hop Hippie when he came on, the only things that he could say was, well, where's the curvature? Where's the curvature? And we can easily show measurements of the curvature. You've measured it, Bob.
I've measured it myself.
Every single geodesic surveyor on the planet knows how to fucking measure the fact that we've got curvature. And the only thing they can do is deny, I don't accept the premise. Basically, they don't understand. They're saying that every single geodetic surveyor in the world is either lying or doesn't know what they're doing. You know, they have to deny. They have to. There's no other way that they can get around what they're saying other than deny very basic things.
I mean, what stunned me was when I was having to explain the mind of God that the scales in your bathroom are force meters. And when you have to go to that sort of low level, the sort of thing you might have to expect to explain to a 14-year-old, you know, you think this guy, there's some basic things missing here. And this is someone, if you've got he must have this degree, because he keeps on saying where you can reference it, and he came top of his class and things like that. But the fact that you have to explain to him what basic forces are, the sort of thing you'd expect a 14, 15-year-old to get to grips with, it does suggest he's either forgotten everything he's known, or been bashed on the head, or had him brainwashed or something, or he's fabricated this stuff or somehow.
Well, I think he's a master of cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely.
He allows his religious convictions to sort of cut off, and he's intelligent enough that he can actually see to some extent where arguments are going, so he invokes his cognitive dissonance early enough that you never actually get to anything constructive.
The thing about the flatter,
let's not forget, this is the guy. Yesterday I was having an argument with him about where the sun goes when it goes below the horizon. And he didn't want to admit that the sun went below the horizon. And about a year ago, I had to explain to him, we're discussing the very same subject. He said the sun just gets further away. And I had to then explain to him that if that happens, the angular size of the sun would get smaller. And I had to spend about half an hour explaining how things get smaller with distance to him. There seems to be some really basic things this guy doesn't understand that I would expect children to understand. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, here's the problem that you run into is the flat earth has a narrative, all right? And they look at the entire world through their narrative. This nonsense that they do with scientific method, they've got a very restrictive definition of scientific method, which mirrors how we tell children how to do an experiment when they're first learning science in the 6th grade. And, you know, the idea there is not to prevent you from fooling yourself, which is what scientific method is for. It's to exclude science so that it supports their narrative. And everything they do is there only to support their narrative, not to find knowledge. And that's concerning. You know, I mean, they can't think things through. If the sun is 3,000 miles high, okay, let's assume that premise is correct. Then we can make a prediction. How far would the sun have to be before it hit the horizon? And given the known distances between points on the Earth are at most, what, 12,500 miles? If the thing is 3,000 miles high, how close would it be to the horizon at 12,500 miles from us?
You're using facts.
It wouldn't be within...
How big would it be?
It wouldn't be within 20 diameters.
Well,
and
let's
it would
not
clearly be smaller.
Well, let's not forget the fact that if the sun just goes further away, then there's no reason why it should actually get dark. Like, none at all.
Yeah.
The sun's still in the sky. Light doesn't just stop randomly. If the sun is still in the sky, no matter how far away it gets, it will still be light.
Let's not forget on the flat Earth model,
Craig, that's not true.
Wait, Bob, you explain to me why that's not true. One sec, Rumpus.
It's not true because right now I can go out in my backyard and it's dark here in Michigan. All right, my backyard is dark. I can see the porch light on the house across the lake. Even though my area is dark, I can still see that light. It's not lighting up my surroundings.
But if the sun,
I can still see the damn light.
If the sun is big enough to, if it's such a strong light source that it literally lights up the entire sky, then it wouldn't matter how far away it got.
And also, let's not forget when the Antarctic summer, when the Antarctica is completely illuminated 24 hours a day, on the flat Earth model, whatever model you pick on for the flat Earth, it means that the light somehow just works in a ring all around the edge of their flat Earth. And
we already know the answer to that, Rumpus.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's like fiber optics through the ice wall. We already know the answer to that.
Fiber optic.
That's already been explained to me.
Right.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that came
yeah,
from UAP.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know him, but it's sort of it's so dispiriting to some extent. I mean, he brought up climate science, and my field of study actually revolves around changes in ice load and their impact on deformation and gravitational and rotational signals.
Oh,
And
really? Right.
yeah, and you were in the chat when I got interviewed by Conspiracy Cats. You asked me a question, I seem to recall.
Oh, yes.
Rumpus.
Oh, I did, yes. I thought it was when, yes, the thing got the bounce back of the, yes, indeed, I thought, hold on, this is the same thing. I couldn't remember if that was the same thing. Yes, because we've got things like Tibet bouncing back and things.
That's right. Well, Tibet is also got tectonic effects driving upwards, but to me, climate science was actually sort of something that I didn't feel like I needed to pay any attention to. And I thought that the debate would be resolved, there'd be a consensus reached in the literature, and but it just didn't happen. It's still a political hot potato, and so I decided, well, obviously I've got to actually look in detail at what's going on, and if you actually study the physics of climate change in detail, I frankly find it quite terrifying, the trajectory that we're currently on. But there's no hope of convincing anybody of that if we can't convince people of the shape of the Earth. Like, to me, they're analogous sort of discussions. You've got a denial of scientific technique and scientific observation just by invoking the same tricks. It's just that the climate denialists have a slightly more sophisticated arsenal of arguments than the flat earthers.
I've got a general comment. I think over the last 100 years, we've become detached from science and engineering. So, for instance, 100 years ago, if you ran a car, you have to be able to bloody fix it and know how it works. These days, the only thing that younger people anyway, get involved with is pressing buttons on an iPhone. The rest of the other technology is all magical, and bloody Alexa or something just responds to things. And so they've become completely detached from the technology and the science. And this is why, when Richard Dawkins has mentioned several times, he's been to parties with people saying, I don't believe in science. And they can do that now because everything's so detached from the real world. So, and things like scientific evidence don't seem to matter so much. So yeah, I agree with you. It's very worrying, but fortunately, the people in control, unless you're bloody American presidents, do seem to be in touch with the science side of things. There are only a very few political leaders who seem to deny climate change. Thank God.
The thing is that when we've got flat earthers and science deniers like that, we can't try and judge our ability to teach by their ability to learn. We all know what we're talking about, but no flat earther is ever going to accept the very basic facts that we present. They can't. It ruins their worldview to even accept a single premise of what we're talking about.
Particularly if they're religious. That's the problem. If they're religious, that really is true.
So there's no point in us worrying about, if we can't teach this person, then is it an issue? Because people like Mind of God and Hip Hop Hippie don't want to learn. They don't care about the truth. They only want to feed their own narrative.
I have to say, I was raised in a strongly religious household. I was raised Catholic, and I persisted in my faith for quite a while. But it never occurred to me at any point to reject evolution or claim that the Earth was only 6,000 years old or that the Earth is flat. You can and perhaps that's. I was a bad Christian, and that's why I'm no longer a Christian. But it just doesn't seem to me to be a strict necessity for them to go down this route.
Were you like me, Tony? I was asked to stop coming to Sunday school because I asked too many questions. Guys.
I persisted a lot earlier, a lot longer, sorry, than just Sunday school.
No,
anyway.
For me, I mean, religion never made sense, and I had too many questions, and that's, I mean, I
well,
was told to leave, and I think that for me cemented the fact, well, you know, if you don't want to try and teach me or answer my questions, then I've no reason to believe you, you know?
I think the question, the statement you made before, if there is a God, he's certainly not somebody I want to be around.
No, certainly not someone to worship.
Because, he seems like a complete dick.
Yeah.
So, if there is a God, that's that seems to be the end of that discussion, and there's no profit in assuming that there's a God, because it's just somebody else I have to flame routinely.
And for me, I've got an issue because I'm jealous of religious people, right? I'm jealous that they can have that belief without evidence, because I can't do that. I physically cannot just believe something if there is no evidence to back it up. And the fact that it even says in the Bible, you know, don't question the faith and all this, you know, I physically can't do that. And I do feel slightly jealous of religious people's ability to just believe.
I'm not. Sorry. I don't know what there. Sorry, I think you've gone off the rails a bit there, Craig.
It's just maybe it's just something I can't comprehend, that ability to just accept a faith without, you know, things to back it up. I don't understand, and it honestly, it confuses me, and I feel jealous of the ability to just believe like that, and to have that faith. You know, I don't have that faith.
I think there's an issue here of religion, and those sorts of simple explanations of the way the world works is a very attractive thing to do, rather than having to understand that there's quantum physics and cosmology and computers and this very complicated world that we live in is actually quite difficult to get grips with. And if you're very stupid, it's quite attractive to just chuck it all in and say, aha, and then to build up your own self-worth, say, I've got some special knowledge. Believing conspiracies, like the fact the Earth is flat, and then all these other people are just sheep. It gives you you'll be rejected by society. You found it difficult to work it out, or you're confused by it. So it's much simpler to say, they're all confused. I've got this simple truth, and I'll go with that instead. It's a very appealing thing for a dimwit.
Yeah.
As well as if you're religious as well, that helps. And the conspiracy thing.
That's quite true.
On that, guys,
but you've got to agree.
Sorry, go on.
You've got to agree, though, that I don't have personally an issue with people having faith. What I do have is an issue with people having faith and substituting it for reason, or feeling that it somehow overrides reason. You can understand physics and be deeply religious.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, 100%. Faith, one's evidence-based. There's nothing wrong with that.
My physics teacher was one of the most devout Christians that I'd ever met. Like, you know, they're not incompatible. And he even, for him, everything that was explained in the Bible and his religious beliefs actually backed up his, knowledge of physics, because he didn't see them as separate. He was like, well, why couldn't God have made it this way? You know, this is how it works, but this could be God's work. You know, and
let's not forget that the first person to propose a Big Bang was a Catholic priest, Demetrio, in about the 1930s or something.
Absolutely,
he was the first one to propose it.
And like, if you're going about evolution and stuff, the Pope thinks evolution is a thing. You know, the guy that's literally in charge of your religion says that evolution is a fact. So, but with that, guys, it is 4:15 in the morning. So I am going to read super chats and get out of here. Before we do, I'll just go down the panel. Bob, anything you'd like to say?
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. I think, Craig, something that was suggested was that I go over Mind of God versus Professor Phil Bell.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, would you like to join me, kind of like I've been doing with Blue, and maybe we could have a chat about that and put it on our channels?
I'd love that, Bob.
All right. Do you have my email? Because I don't think I have yours.
FightTheFlatEarth@gmail.com.
All right. Fight the Flat Earth, all spelled out?
Yeah.
I'll send you a note and we'll make it happen.
Brilliant, Bob. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. If you guys haven't subscribed to Bob the Science Guy, he's way smarter than me. You should definitely do it. Go check him out. Tony,
I don't agree with that. And one thing that I should mention, though, that I've got a new channel out. It's called Common Sense Science, and it has nothing to do with flat Earth. It's just basic. It's going to have a lot of astronomy and stuff on it, so it's going to be kind of.
I have to say that
Looking forward to that.
I did appreciate your influenza videos, so thank you for doing those.
And Tony, I want to say thank you very much for coming on. Your expertise have been amazing. And I want to thank you again for the advice you've been giving me on geodesic surveying and stuff, because I'm more than aware that's a subject I need to get better at. So,
well, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on. It's always frustrating. I'm surprised oftentimes by how flat earthers can seem to be coherent and quite eloquent, and then turn out to have a profound vacuum where they should have a knowledge base.
I know they keep going on about no vacuum next to gas pressure. Well, how do they explain what's in their head?
Yeah, and I have to say, it's an excellent question. I have to say, it's a pleasure to.
That's why their ears pop.
It's a pleasure to meet Rumpus and Bob, and also Team Skeptic, as brief as it was.
Yeah, Team was having issues with his VMix, so he couldn't join in the chat. But thank you very much, Tony. I really appreciate you coming on. And last but not least, the Rumpus. We didn't really get to go into the optics too much, which I know is your thing.
I've got 7 big issues that resulted from the Professor Bell, and we didn't get to any of them. all to do with gravity and God knows what, and the other things that he made claims about. I got listed some 7.
Hey, if you want to do a video going over some of the stuff that the Mind of God said, I'll happily promote that for you.
Yeah, I mean, my channel. I'm about to do some big stuff on my channel with all this big 250-page document I've been trying to do, and also something on astrodynamics. I've got some other guy I'm involved with. We're going to try and do a series on that as well. So my channel might become a lot more active soon. But yes, definitely a pleasure to meet Tony. I thought it was gave me lots of information when he was on your thing last time. It's very useful. So yeah, it was a good chat. It's a pit in the Mind of God. He's actually one of the better ones. He's actually one of the more intelligent ones, unfortunately. But he does seem to. For someone who claims to have an electrical engineering degree, he seems to have amazing gaps, as Tony said, in his knowledge and his reasoning and things you'd expect him to know, but doesn't.
That was very much my point. I mean, I don't claim to have an electrical engineering degree. I've covered basic stuff during my training in the military and stuff, but I know some very basic stuff about electrical engineering that he doesn't seem to have a knowledge of. And that really confuses me for who he says he is. And for him not to be able to understand very, very basic explanations.
The electrical potential thing. I mean, that electrical potential thing is something you should know when you're about 17.
I know, right?
Jesus Christ.
But anyway, I've got some super chats to read, so we're going to get through those, and then we're going to shut up for the night. I do want to say thank you to all the panel for coming on tonight, and thank you to the Flat Earthers for, as usual, being retards and providing some entertainment. Right, so let's just get on with these super chats then. Rachel O'Daniels for $2 says, great show, I loved it. That was talking about Professor Bell and Mind of God. Yep, Professor Bell absolutely rocked it. He's in the chat, so good job, dude. We've got another new member. I can't read Japanese, so I can't read the name, but thank you very much. Welcome to the Scrappers. And we got the Plot Hole for $5 who says, because I'm a sucker for charity, cheers mate. Yeah, a third of my super chats from the debate, which equates to about £105, will be donated to an education charity chosen by my patrons and members. And we've got Jazakai for $5 says, Mind of God is clearly a Poe. He denied any evidence presented, didn't provide his own, kept talking about his subs and popularity, then claimed victory. Poe. No, just an idiot, I think. Carrie Bronson for $2 with a game over sticker. Yeah, because Mind of God got ruined. Monkey Cat Pat Pat for $5 says, when asked to show math, flat earthers always ask us to show the math, just so they can deny it. That's because they have no math or evidence. Yeah, no flat earthers have evidence. We went through that. Monkey Cat Pat Pat for $2 says, so science is a story, but the Bible is fact. Yeah, the hypocrisy amazes me. Crafty Keela for €2 says, Tony's expression says what we're all thinking. Yeah, Tony did look quite stressed at some points in that conversation.
I apologise. I've not got the greatest filter when I get frustrated.
No, dude, honestly, I completely understand. I've been dealing with flat earthers for about 18 months. Frustration is part of my life. Then we got...
Tony did an outstanding job keeping his cool.
Yeah, he did, absolutely. Then we've got basic trigonometry for £2 that says UPS, 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 UPS. Also, Tony is amazeballs. Yeah, I think UPS is some kind of like generator or something I get for my computer. I'm going to need something because the power cuts around here lately have been stupid. War Coderid for 01 for $5 says, I have been proven not as well educated as him, therefore conspiracy. Yeah, that's flat earthers in general. Crafty Keeler for €2 says, mind the gods saying, go look at a book being ridiculous. I know, they don't like doing reading that could refute any of their ridiculous ideas. Carrie Oliver for $33.33. Thank you very much. It's only Flat Earth that says, show me, give me proof. Globe is proven. Tell us how we're wrong. Positive evidence. Never going to happen. You can't. Yeah, like I said, I've been doing this for 18 months and I've never seen any Flat Earth evidence. Bob, have you ever seen any Flat Earth evidence?
No. Oh. And, you know, what they claim as evidence is easily explainable with really ninth grade level reasoning.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all right, they can show us what they think is evidence for the flat earth, but here's the challenge. Show me evidence that exclusively supports the flat earth. Not something that looks like it could be on a flat earth, but is easily explained by basic physics. Show me some evidence that exclusively supports the flat earth and is impossible on the globe. Then there can be a conversation.
The biggest problem flat earth has is they cannot connect the dots.
Yeah, they don't have an ability for abject thought.
I had a question that perhaps sorry, it will be brief. That black swan image. So we all agree what it depicts. The only issue is what can logically be deduced from that depiction. So this is a logic problem, not a science problem. Yeah. So it should be easy to get, say, a logician that everybody can accept is skilled in logic and assess the argument that they're making. Because they don't accept scientists when they claim that they can do logic, but presumably they'd accept the best logicians on the planet if they said so. You know, it seems a logic problem rather than an observation problem.
No, it's
my only point.
It's a them being a retard
authority
problem.
Logical fallacy.
Yeah. Man, I'm pretty sure if anyone was playing Flat Earth Bingo for the past 3 hours, they would have won several times over. Right, so we've got Crafty Keeler for €2 who says, it's 3 a.m. here. Good night, folks. Well done, reasonable panelists. Yeah, it's really late. The banner of Hamura Akimi for $2 says, gravity is a scary word to flat earthers. Yeah, I know. They can just say, reification fallacy, and that's about it. Raven Zero for $2 says, hip hop hippie, are you a real human with brain death? No, I think if there was a God, when they were putting hip hop hippie together, they forgot the brain. And God was like, fuck it, it's Friday, I want to go off for the weekend, just send him down anyway. Anamorphic Mind
that
for
makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Anamorphic Mind for $5 says, FTFE, you're better off not having drip drop drooling in the conversation. Yeah, no, you're right. He has nothing to add and he won't come back to the channel. Martinista for $2 says, mind of God, only that which I can understand is valid, and he doesn't understand a lot. Andrew Hassad for $2 Australian says, boot the hippie. Yeah, he went. Monkey Cat Pat Pat for $2. Shut up, hip hop hippie, and listen. He can't. Rick's World for $2 Canadian says, FTFE, please boot hippie. He has nothing. Wow, a lot of you really wanted hippie gone, huh? Tommy Gronville for 50 Nokia says, whoa, the awesome amount of combined IQ across this board, and here comes, there is no curve. Seems we lost, guys. It's flat. Yeah, we got destroyed in that debate. Absolutely. Yeah. Martin C for $2 Canadian says, mind of God, how does your cell phone know up and down? It's because there's an accelerometer in there which reacts to gravity. Song 13 for $2 says, please don't invite Hip Hop Hippie to any more chats. I think he might be on Teams soon, but apart from that, he's not coming back here. Uthrid, son of Uthrid, for 5 Canadian says, the heliocentric model is not a reification fallacy because, unlike Flat Earth, it has construct validity. Look that up, Hip Hop Hippie. Glass Monster for 2 Canadian says, can I have a join link? There was a lot of people in here anyway, but I will get you in soon, dude, honestly. Sleet for $6.67 Australian says it would be fun if there was an instrument which would measure the intelligence gradients across the live chat field. I think there would be a large gradient from flat earther to normal person. Because Bug Eye for $20 says boot Triple H. Yeah, I did. Thank you. Mug Thug the Mighty for 5 Canadian says the issue is the ability for abstract thought. Exactly what I was just saying. This is directly tied to IQ. Hip Hop Hippie and Mind of God are not capable of understanding the explanation. Gosh of Heckfire for $6.66. Hail Sagan. Hold his feet to the fire, FTFE. I think I did. That's why he ran away. The Snark for €2 says, did anyone keep count of Mind of God lies? I couldn't. I can't count that high. Sorry. Rachel O'Daniels for 2 Canadian, 2 Australian, sorry, says FTFE for life. Thank you. I love the support. RT96 for $2 says night is just compressed day. Flat Earth Field Manual. Yeah. Wow. Don't give them new ideas, please. Let's start using that. TC Lucas for $2 says, Tony, thank you for teaching me about new stuff. You got a fan there, Tony?
No, thank you.
I really did enjoy having you on, so thank you. The Snark for €2 says...
I'm happy to come back if you ever do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have you. I think me and Team should get you on.
I
for
learned
a
stuff from
live
you
chat.
tonight, Tony.
Yeah, we all appreciate it.
I learned stuff from you tonight.
Thank you, Bob.
The Snark for €2 says new flat Earth term, not hypocrisy, but hip-hopcracy. Yep, very good. Then we got Milton's Morals for $26.66. FTFE, I would be happy to present you an argument that the biblical authors do in fact assume a flat Earth. I can cite real authorities in the field. Either way, the Earth is a sphere. Keep up the good work, sir. Interesting, because pretty much every religious person I've spoken to laughs at the suggestion. Stringer News 1 for $10 says you can get a good uninterruptible power supply, UPS, for 100 to 200 for a 1000 volts model. Yeah, I'm going to have to look into something because, honestly, I don't know what's going on lately with the power supply around here, but it keeps knocking my streams out, so I'm going to look into something. And then Justinian, last one for $5, says Mind of God actually turned on. Mind of God is actually turned on and gets off by public masochism. He is used tonight as a fapping pleasure marathon. That's why he says he wins every debate. Oofed. Mind of God got ruined. No flat earther can ever win a debate because the earth is objectively not flat. That's it for tonight, guys. I really appreciate the support you've shown me tonight. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Tony. And thank you, Rumpus, for coming on and destroying Mind of God like you did. It's been a great night, guys. Please like and subscribe. Subscribe to all the guys in the panel. And I will see you soon on, tomorrow on Team Skeptics channel. And then I've got a video out on Sunday. Remember, stupidity is not a right. Fight the flat earth. Fight the flat. Fight the flat. Fight the